Good afternoon to all my friends connecting from India, and good morning to all my friends connecting from France. And welcome to the first session of parallel workshop on green chemistry, biotechnology, and natural resources, which is jointly coordinated by Professor Catherine from University of Bordeaux and myself. First, I would like to introduce myself and this session. And I'm Dr. Shubhangi Umbarkar, scientist from National Chemical Laboratory, and this is NCL is one of the CSIR research laboratory which is located in Pune. We have 38 labs of CSIR, which is equivalent to CNRS France. And I'm in NCL since last more than 20 years, and my research area is broadly catalysis and specifically like environmental catalysis and catalyst development. So now to talking about like in what Indo-French collaborations or cooperation which we have with our institute. Since last 12 years, we have an international associated laboratory program going on between the CSIR India, where NCL is a nodal lab or coordinating lab, and which is with CNRS France, where UCCS Lille University and ICPES Strasbourg University, they are the partners in this collaboration. Since last 12 years, we are working on this project, and under this program, we have multiple research groups from all the participating institutes collaborating actively. This has been a very successful collaboration recognized by CNRS as well as CSIR with several joint publications, joint PhD thesis. We have a mobility of several students as well as scientists in last 12 years. We also had, as an outcome of this, we could also have some of the CEFIPRA projects which were funded by, this jointly funded by CEFIPRA. And we also organized quite a few of Indo-French symposiums. And one of them is like just last month, we had our 6th Indo-French conference in Strasbourg under this International Associated Laboratory program. Not only we, but then there are several such International Associated Laboratory programs going on with different institutions in India and France. And this collaboration is mainly going on very well on a front of a fundamental understanding or fundamental science. But I think there is a need to take a step forward where we can really work on joint technologies which will be of interest to both the countries. And some such issues and some such things will be discussed in the panel discussion at the end of the session, which we are coordinating. And I would like to have the views from the audience as well. And so today's session, it will be devoted to green chemistry, which will be coordinated by me. And then tomorrow, the session will be on biotechnology and natural resources, which will be coordinated by Professor Catherine. So to open up this session, I would like to invite the first speaker opening speaker of this workshop, who is Professor Avinash Kumbar. He is from the organizing institute, which is the Savitribai Phule Pune University, and they are hosting this program. And I will just briefly introduce the speaker. So Professor Avinash Kumbar, he is a head of the Department of Chemistry in Savitribai Phule Pune University, which was formerly known as University of Pune. He is a senior professor there since March 2020, but he is there since almost more than 20 years. So he is a PhD in bioinorganic chemistry in 1993 from the same university. His current research interests are metal DNA interactions, metal supramolecular chemistry, metal complexes for water oxidation. So far, he has guided 14 PhD students and more than 100 MSc students. He has almost 78 publications and his H-index is 23. He has several awards and recognitions to his credit. I will not name them, but I would like to request Professor Kumbar to start, give his opening remarks on this session, on this workshop, as well as give his technical talk. So over to you, Professor Kumbar.
Thank you very much, Madam Shubhangi Umbarkar, Madam, for this introduction, and also for initiating this workshop on green chemistry, biotechnology, and natural resources. And we as one of the hosts of this workshop or this knowledge summit, we are very glad to participate in this workshop. We at the chemistry department are involved in several research on this topic and others as well. But as the topic is green chemistry, biotechnology, and natural resources, it obviously will involve aspects of catalysis, I think, which is very much in the air in Pune, because NCL being one of the important centers of catalysis. We also have semiconductor materials and a lot of focus at the moment on CO2 conversion, artificial photosynthesis, hydrogen, oxygen generation, storage, and obviously nanotechnology. And to use the earth abundant metals for such materials. We are also quite working in the area, especially for energy and environment. And I think tomorrow there will be a lot of focus on phytochemistry, Ayurveda, traditional medicine. But I feel that there is a need for green chemistry, biotechnology, also in the health aspects, material science in the health aspects, like medical devices, diagnostics. And there are going to be several sustainable development goals, SDGs, as we say. And of late, the National Education Policy 2020 in India is the buzzword. There is a lot of interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary research that is envisaged. And in addition to that, there has to be transnational research and education. This is the focus of this workshop as well, with India and France coming together and SPPU hosting this workshop and the Knowledge Summit to form global innovation networks. I mean, that's what is going to be the future. And COVID has taught us that we have to have research not only to last, but also to adapt to the changes that are taking place. And finally, obviously, we also need to, the societal impact of such transnational research collaborations, which have to be measured, which have to be improved, and we have to come out for green, clean, and affordable material for the future, both in terms of its utilization and also its impact on the society. So with this brief background, and which are the focus of this today's workshop. So I have chosen a topic today, which is DNA condensation by coordination complexes. The reason for doing this is obviously both condensation of DNA and coordination complexes are what we work on. The aim of this is basically gene therapy, which is the major goal of this. And as you all know, at the most basic level, gene therapy can be described as an intercellular delivery of genetic material to generate a therapeutic effect by correcting an existing abnormality or providing cells with a new function. This is an important aspect of treatment at the moment, and a lot of research is being conducted in this area. But the major pitfalls is what I would like to enumerate or mention, is because this requires what are called as gene carrier systems. Okay, at the moment, there are two gene carrier systems that are being used, which are viral vectors. One of them is viral vectors, the major one, which include retroviral vectors, lentiviral vectors, adenoviral vectors, herpes simplex virus, and adeno-associated virus, and several viruses are being used. This is something like an open truck, as you can see in the cartoon, where the driver is driving that towards his goal. However, there are also some non-viral vectors that are required as main carriers for delivery systems. These can be simple DNA, with there are some issues, cationic liposomes, polycations, lipopolypexes, dendrimers, metal complexes. These are some of the non-viral vectors that are being used. There are several advantages of viral vectors, but also several risk factors. Viral vectors seem to be efficient, active, then easy cell transfection, and are quite biologically stable, and therefore are the current approach for gene delivery systems. However, they have several risk factors as well, such as they have a small cargo capacity, low safety, infection to other types of cells, and several other risk factors are there. And one of the most important is obviously resistance to repeated infections, as well as cost and the involved cost is too large to be affordable. Whereas the non-viral vectors, which are simple organic, inorganic coordination complexes or dendrimers, they are easy to handle, characterize, and for their use in vivo as well as in vitro, and are amenable to several derivatizations that can take place, and also have a high nucleic acid loading capacity, can be used for multiple and repeated injections. However, there are several challenges: high transfection efficiency, specificity, and also reduce unwanted reactions, and several other challenges that are there. But they have to be tried. And one of the most important aspects of a material to be used as non-viral vectors is their ability to condense or compact nucleic acids. So that's the major requirement of a vector: efficient delivery of nucleic acids. The gene transfection includes collapse or condensation of the DNA into compact orderly particles. That's what we need. And these carriers can condense or pack and protect this DNA and oligonucleotides from degradation by nucleases. So such material are being investigated for their potential use as gene delivery vectors or non-viral vectors especially. A cartoon explains how this works. In that, you can also have a vector, or you can also have a metal complex, which I'm trying to introduce as vectors. And the mechanism is the same in terms of the non-viral vectors: formation of condensed DNA, endocytosis, endosomal release, nuclear trafficking, and function as gene delivery vectors. For the basic, as I said, the basis of all this is metals are quite amenable for their interactions with nucleic acids, and metal complexes also are studied to a large extent for their interaction with nucleic acids. And there are several interactions with nucleic acids, such as covalent binding and also non-covalent binding. Metal complexes are useful in both these. And in fact, one of the most long-standing treatment for the cancer is the well-known cisplatin complex, which is an inorganic complex, a simple inorganic complex. And in fact, that has been the mainstay of chemotherapy for several years now. And the basic mechanism of this is interaction with the nucleic acids. In addition to the covalent binding, which is very famous, there are several non-covalent binding interactions, such as hydrogen bonding, ionic electrostatic interaction with nucleic acids, groove binding, intercalation, and so forth and so on. And these can be evaluated and used for several applications as biosensors, DNA probes, and as well as non-viral gene delivery vectors. So here are some of the organic molecules that are being used as DNA condensing agents, such as spermidines, spermines, and several long chain molecules. One of the common factors that they have is they have a very high charge, high positive charge, and aliphatic chains. So these are some of the molecules which help condense DNA. In addition to that, there are several Gemini surfactants such as DNA condensing agents. We have some Gemini surfactants with aromatic and aliphatic chains, again with a highly positively charged, and DNA can be condensed using such molecules which have a long tail, ions which induce charges, and so forth and so on. Similarly, we also have some other surfactants which help self-organize DNA into honeycomb pattern like films. Here is an example of that. So there is this very conspicuous pattern that comes out, the honeycomb like pattern, when some of the DNA interact with such surfactants. Metal complexes, one of the most simple metal complex that you have is a cobalt hexamine complex, very easily prepared in the laboratory, also does induce a DNA condensation because of its high charge and several NH bonding or hydrogen bonding with the nucleic acid, and that results in condensates of nucleic acids. So in fact, that was one of the first complex which was used for the DNA condensing, and therefore gave an impetus to research of inorganic or coordination complexes to induce DNA condensation. There are several ruthenium polypyridyl complexes such as these, which help condense DNA. And here you can see the AFM images of the plasmid DNA condensates, which can be used, and DLS measurements, which tell us about the condensation, the DNA particles that have been formed. So that gave us an idea, and we started synthesizing ruthenium complexes. We started synthesizing ruthenium complexes, such as ruthenium polypyridyl complexes, which have a very interesting structure in terms of its association or head-to-head and tail-to-tail association, this kind of molecular clip ligands that we have. And we have measured the plasmid DNA condensates by DLS measurements, and in fact seen that there is a great cellular uptake and internalization of these condensates by labeling the plasmid DNA by green fluorescent proteins. And so therefore we can actually show that these condensates are taken up inside the cells. So that gave us an idea, is that we can synthesize such complexes. These complexes have been structurally characterized by several characterization techniques, including single crystal X-ray structures. Their gel electrophoresis also evidenced DNA condensation. And so therefore, we saw the cellular uptake of these complexes and several such series of complexes, wherein you can see that they can take the DNA inside the cell. And so therefore, we feel that they can act as non-viral gene delivery systems. We also have several binuclear, we have seen several binuclear complexes. Here is an example of the literature that binuclear complexes can also be used for such internalization of nucleic acids through pi-pi stacking interactions and other interactions which can be attenuated. And so here are the inherent characteristics that are required of metal complexes for DNA condensations. One is high charge density, which can be possible because of metal complexes being positively charged, and also several other interactions that can be electrostatic, pi-pi interactions, covalent interactions, hydrogen bonding interactions. And if the complexes have inherent photophysical properties, which some of these compounds are, and low cytotoxicity of the complexes, these can be used for enabling their application in cellular imaging and also tracking DNA condensate into the cells. So using these background material, we have synthesized several metal complexes, such as series of complexes, which are in this case binuclear complexes, which have a very high charge, which can help in enhancing electrostatic interactions with DNA, which can have ancillary ligands, which have an increased planarity, as can be seen here. You can increase the planarity which can enhance pi-pi interactions with the DNA base pairs intercalation. And we can also have increase the bridging structures, 2 metal ions anchoring 4 ancillary ligands. And so we can increase the length of this flexible linker as we have. And this can give rise to structures which will be able to, as we saw, help in condensing DNA. We have studied this by various techniques such as viscosity on addition of DNA. It evidences condensation of the DNA. We have also seen the binding or coiling of the DNA helix by complexes by using circular diachrosm spectroscopy, which shows the B to Z transition of this condensation liquid crystalline phase, indicating the condensation, and several other techniques such as imaging techniques, such as TEM, evidence that these structures are really condensing into nano condensates, and dynamic light scattering measurement also indicate the condensation of the DNA by increase in the size of these nano aggregates that are formed because of the interaction of these complexes with nucleic acids. Another experiment that we perform is when we see this under the condensate under microscopy, fluorescence microscopy, we also see a honeycomb-like ordered assembly, which is an evidence of the condensation of these nucleic acids. And such kind of complexes are required. For example, you have another series where we have seen both under fluorescence microscopy, SEM, and under AFM conditions, we see that they give rise to a honeycomb-like ordered assembly of the DNA complex adducts that are formed on interaction of these complexes. And several such series of complexes, you will see that we have an honeycomb-like ordered assembly DNA complex adduct that is formed. These complexes, a hypothetical model of their interaction is shown over here. DNA, being polyanionic in nature, interacts with the positively charged metal complex through electrostatic and additionally non-covalent interactions to give rise to a honeycomb-like ordered assembly to form a DNA complex adduct. These condensates have also been seen in gel electrophoresis to form a condensed DNA structure. The plasmid DNA condensates have a size of about 500 nanometers, and the AFM images also indicate the DNA condensates. Another aspect that we need to study is the cytotoxicity and cellular uptake studies of these complexes, and we do see that these complexes are not cytotoxic at the concentrations that they are used. So their IC50 values is approximately 25 micromolar, and you can see that they are not very cytotoxic. And we can also see that based on the cellular uptake studies on complexes treated with the MCF cell lines, we see that they are not cytotoxic and concentrate in the cytoplasm of the cells. Several such series have been checked for their cytotoxicity, and it has been seen that they are not cytotoxic to the MCF cell lines. So therefore, they are less cytotoxic and can be used. So such kind of honeycomb-like assembly for DNA complex adducts have been observed for these complexes because of the high charge on the complexes, symmetrical shape and size of these complexes with ancillary ligands with intercalative ability, and an appropriate length of the bridging ligand. Such complexes, which are moderately cytotoxic against these cell lines, make them potential candidates for gene delivery as well as drug delivery vectors. So such material can be formed, can be synthesized to give rise to gene delivery, non-viral gene delivery vectors. Initially, we have used ruthenium metal complexes because they have photophysical properties which can be monitored. Now these can be extended to simple, earth abundant and biocompatible metals to check their gene delivery abilities. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Sushma Singh for carrying most of this work, Department of Science and Technology, Department of Chemistry, SPPU, and the Central Instrumentation Facility for this facilities provided, and Dr. Aisha Khan and Prasad Kulkarni from Agarkar Research Institute for helping us in some of the measurements. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Kumba. And the session is open for the discussion. So if there are any questions, we can take one or two questions now. You can raise your hand or you can type the question in the chat box. Okay, if there are no questions, then I would like to thank Professor Kumar and just let's give him a big round of applause. And thank you, Professor Kumar. And now I would like to invite the next speaker of the session. It is Professor Christophe Michon. So just to introduce briefly to him, Dr. Christophe Michon, he did his PhD in 2003 from University of Strasbourg. And he has 54 peer-reviewed articles. He has written 1 book chapter. He has given 11 invited seminars and 40 oral communications. Since 2009 to 2019, he was a senior scientist at University of Lille, France. And then he moved to his present position where he's a senior scientist at University of Strasbourg. He has the following for fellowships and awards. In 2021, he received USIAS award from University of Strasbourg. And in 2018, he received CNRS Emergence at INC 2018. He has supervised around 3 PhD or postdoc students, 4 PhD students, and 9 master students. So today he will be talking to us towards sustainable catalysts for the hydrogenation and hydrosilylation of fine chemicals. So over to you, Christophe. You have to unmute. Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, thank you, Shubhangi. Well, we know each other for a long time, so I can call you Shubhangi, but anyway. Oh, yeah. Well, hello everybody, good morning or good afternoon for Indians and good morning for French. I'm glad to be here this morning and thank you for the introduction, Shubhangi. And yes, today I will talk about some works we have performed between France and India, especially between Lille, my former lab, and Pune and Pune. So this work was with me and collaborators in France that will acknowledge at the end, and with Dr. Shubhangi Umbarkar and also Dr. Kumar Vankar. And this is dedicated to development of sustainable catalysts for the hydrogenation and hydrosilylation of fine chemicals. So there are various, catalytic reduction of carbon heteroatom and carbon in saturations is a key synthetic pathway for the synthesis of fine chemicals. And with the synthetic tools we have in hands, we have hydrogenation reactions, which involve for sure hydrogen gas, as well as transfer hydrogenation with a hydrogen donor, and hydrosilylation reaction implying hydrosilane, and further step of their acylation, which has an advantage to require mild reaction conditions and allow interesting chemoselectivity. So shown below is a reactivity scale of various carbon heteroatom functions from aldehyde, acyl chloride, the easiest, to amide, the toughest to reduce. So concerning catalytic hydrogenations, well, this can be for fine chemical synthesis. You can perform this with heterogeneous catalyst and homogeneous catalyst. But concerning the synthesis of fine chemical spiral, fine chemicals, it's much more as a job of homogeneous catalyst, and this is what we have focused on in the past with various industrial partners in France. So oil industry and Sanofi, for example, or ADCO more recently. So we have been involved in various precious metals catalyzed homogeneous catalysts. So hydrogenation of aromatic and heterocycles like indoles, quinolines, pyrazines, as well as oximes. But and amides also, and heterogeneous catalysts could be also used for the reduction of hydrogenation of cyclic imides. But and more recently, well, we applied palladium catalyst for the asymmetric hydrogenation of ilantoins and further production of valine amino acids, which are interesting for ADCO. However, well, you can see many precious metals and homogeneous processes, so we still need a sustainable catalyst for such hydrogenation reactions. And this is why we perform, in fact, develop a project in collaboration with NCL Pune and Dr. Umbaka on catalytic hydrogenations using palladium-supported catalysts using acidic fluorinated magnesium hydroxide supports. So this project implies hydrogenation of various imines, heterocycles, and typically these fluorinated magnesium hydroxide supports were clearly acidic according to the ammonia temperature program and desorption profiles of catalysts prepared by precipitations or impregnation, as shown here. And well, further characterizations regarding the surface of the catalyst highlight that the precipitated catalyst had a higher surface area by comparison to impregnated catalyst, but the impregnated catalyst had a better metal dispersion. In addition, the elemental composition obtained through EDX analysis of the catalyst shown a higher content of palladium for the impregnated catalyst by comparison to the precipitated catalyst. So 10 images of the catalyst allow us to characterize the nanoparticles, the palladium nanoparticles and the magnesium fluoride nanoparticles according to their d-spacing values. And so we could notice, in fact, that the average particle size for the impregnated catalyst was about 7-8 nanometers. And regarding the impregnated catalyst, we had a broader distribution of particles with 5-16 nanometers particle distribution. So we then studied we then switched to reactivity studies and application to hydrogenation. So at first we studied the hydrogenation of various aldimines, and you can see that the reactions are quantitative in 1 or 2 hours with reasonable catalyst loading at 60 Celsius and 1 bar hydrogen. Substrates like oximes can also be hydrogenated, provided you apply 10 bar pressure. And ketimines are also well effectively hydrogenated under 1 bar hydrogen with almost quantitative yields, but well, in few hours, 4 to 18 hours for more difficult substrates. Switching to heterocycles, we could notice the hydrogenations required tougher conditions, stronger hydrogen pressure, 20 bar, and stronger temperature of reaction, 90 Celsius. Quinolines could be hydrogenated, various derivatives we noticed, in fact, the impregnated catalyst was more active than the precipitated catalyst for several substrates. We had drawbacks regarding the scope with dechlorination proceeding along the hydrogenation of the heterocycles, same for the decarboxylation of such substrates. However, the esters could be selectively hydrogenated without reduction of the ester function, as shown here. Other heterocycles could be hydrogenated, and this is very important to say that it was done without any acid additive. Many catalysts required acid additives to be to allow hydrogenation of such heterocycles in combination with a catalyst. But here, thanks to the acidic support, we could skip the use of acids and perform effectively the hydrogenation of various heterocycles from pyridines, pyrazine, acridines, basoquinolines, or indoles. So the recyclability of this catalyst was outstanding according to the experiments we have done. Over 10 runs, there was no palladium leaching according to ICP analysis, and the TEM analysis of the catalyst after recycling was really clear. We had no aggregation of the catalyst, and particles size was not modified. So overall, good results were obtained. However, the drawback of all of this is the catalytic activities, which remain to be improved because we had not so high turnover frequencies. So for industry applications, it remains to be improved. Switching to catalytic hydrosilation for fine chemicals. So this is mainly the job of homogeneous catalysts, and we have done in the past various examples using precious metals catalysts, like based on iridium-3 metallocycles shown here or here. These metallocycles are very active for the hydrosylation of esters to aldehydes, so selective, chemoselective reduction of esters to other aldehydes. We could also reduce amides, secondary, tertiary amides to amines with turnover numbers up to 10,000. And various carbonyl derivatives from carboxylic acid, esters, ketones, aldehydes were converted to the corresponding alcohols in mild conditions and straightforward way. So we switch then to nanoparticle cobalt and nickel, which are much more abundant metal, and focusing mainly on nanoparticle catalysis. So first we developed cobalt zero nanoparticles for the selective conversions of esters to aldehydes or ketone or alcohols, depending the preparation of the catalyst. So this was ligand-free catalysis, and we could observe in evidence presence of cobalt nanoparticles in both systems. And more recently, this year, in fact, we published a system of nickel zero nanoparticles stabilized by NHC ligands, diaminocarbon ligands. In fact, this catalyst could be applied for the reduction of ketones, carbonyls, derivatives. So in collaboration with Pune, we in fact developed and Kumar Vankar for the calculation part, we developed, in fact, organocatalysts for hydrosilation reactions and more specifically reductive deoxygenation of esters to ethers. So as shown here, you can see, in fact, the catalyst we are using. This is a fluorinated borate salt with a potassium anion. And so this is the ester that is reduced. And we could evidence the silane activation through carbon fluoride and silicon hydride non-covalent interactions. The potassium acting also as a activating partner of the ester and the silane. And so this reaction implies the formation of hemiacetal, then that allows, in fact, as intermediate, the further reduction to get the ether. And first evidence of such organocatalyzed reaction was obtained using in situ infrared. we could evidence these H-bonding interactions between the carbon fluoride and silicon hydride bonds by studying in situ this chemical reaction. And just adding several equivalents of silane, of this phenylsilane, we could evidence, in fact, the appearance of these carbon fluoride stretching, anti-stretching bands, which are new by comparison with the without any reaction. And this clearly evidences such weak interactions, non-coordinating interactions that allows the activation of the silane. So further, previously, evidence of such weak interactions with carbon fluoride and silicon hydride bonds were observed by Kwak and Fujiki in polymeric systems, but not involving borate salts. So just to go a little bit in details, so as I said, potassium bath salt like this catalyst could be used for catalyzing such reductive deoxygenation of esters to ethers. And this reaction proceeds at 2 mol% catalyst effectively and almost quantitative yields in 15 hours reaction at 100 Celsius. The reaction works also with the sodium bath salt, but a little bit less effective. Other fluorinated bath salts or reagents were not effective catalysts for such reaction. And we evidence the key role of the potassium in this reaction by trapping it with the 18,6 chrome ether. And as a result, the reaction was completely quenched while using this chrome ether, which trapped completely the potassium. So looking at the scope of the reductive deoxygenation of esters to ethers, we could evidence, in fact, a broader reactivity with various esters alkylated are related. The reaction has some limitations. Alpha brominated esters could not be kept. We had debromination while reducing also carbonyl. Steric-inded substrates had no reactivity, display no reactivity, and also arylated esters substituted by chloride or methoxy were not reactive at all. Regarding lactones, well, arylated lactones were reactive and could be converted to the corresponding ethers. However, alkylated lactones were not reactive at all. By comparison, anhydrides could be reduced completely provided 4 equivalents of silanes were used. And however, the phthalate anhydride was not reactive. Other derivatives like this 2 other esters substituted by carbonyl in 2 or 3 positions were also reduced effectively, including these conjugated esters. We could reduce at the same time the carbon-carbon double bond and the carbon-oxygen bonds. However, once the carbon-carbon double bond is no longer conjugated with the esters, we have no reduction of it. So looking at by calculations, DFT calculations with NCI analysis and NBO analysis, we could evidence Ms. Roshi-Dixit and Kumar Vanka at Pune evidence, in fact, such non-covalent interactions between the carbon fluoride and silicon hydride bonds. You can see here interactions between the sigma orbital of the ACH bond and the sigma star orbital of the carbon fluoride bond. And this was confirmed, further confirmed by NBO analysis. We've obtained favorable energies for such interactions of 58.2 kilocalorie per mole. The interaction between potassium cation and the oxygen of the esters was also illustrated and confirmed by NCI analysis and also by NBO treatment. It was obtained favorable energies at around 38.7 kilocalorie per mole for these interactions. So let me just already conclude and underline that we have developed within the past years interesting palladium catalysts supported on acidic fluorinated magnesium hydroxides for the hydrogenation of imines and heterocycles. In a second project, we have developed organocatalysts for the hydrosilane activations through non-covalent interactions. And apply them for the reductive deoxygenation of esters to ethers. So both projects led to recent publications. And as a perspective, we have development of we have the possibility to develop hydrogenation catalysts with higher palladium loading and activities. And also we can develop organocatalysts with other organic fluorines as hydrogen bond acceptors and get better catalysts. And this is a part of CEFIPA project that's just been submitted at the last call. So let me acknowledge people who helped me with all of this. Vincent Rizac, Nicolas Merle, and Francine Bossou at UCCS, Lille, in the city of Lille, and my former lab, in fact, Mr. Xavier Trivelli for NMS Studies. And I'm really in depth with to Kumar Vanka and Rishi Dixit for the theoretical calculations at the NCL Pune for the hydrosilation project. Regarding the hydrogenation project, I really appreciate working with Shubhangi Umbakar, Mohan Dongare, and Ms. Reshma Kokane. And all of this would not be possible without this network between CNRS and NCL Pune. It's this Indian-French International Associate Laboratory we had for 12 years called Catalysis for Sustainable and Environmental Chemistry, LEA, CNRS Matsukat. Finally, I would like to thank you very much for all your attention.
Thanks a lot, Christophe, for the wonderful talk and highlighting our collaboration. So the talk is open for the discussion. Any questions? Okay, there are no questions. Then let's thank Christophe for the wonderful talk. And thanks, Christophe.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. And then now I invite the next speaker of the session. It is my colleague, Dr. Vinod. So to introduce Vinod briefly, Dr. Vinod has completed his PhD in 2001 under the guidance of Professor Sienna Rao, who knows, everybody knows about him. So his PhD was in the area of surface science and catalysis from Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research, Bangalore. And subsequently, he worked as a postdoctoral fellow at several universities in Europe. And in 2010, he came back to India and he joined as a senior scientist at CSIR National Chemical Laboratory, Pune. Since then, he's here. And then currently, he holds the position of senior principal scientist. In addition to this, he holds the position of chairman of a student academic office. He has more than 100 scientific publications in international peer-reviewed journals. He has 2 patent applications to his credit. He is also a co-recipient of a National Award for Technology Innovation in Petrochemicals and Downstream Plastic Processing recently, 2021. Industry instituted by Ministry of Petroleum and Government of India. So today, Vinod will be talking to us on nanocatalysis through shape and surface modulations. So Vinod, over to you.
Thank you, Shubhangi, for your kind introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your kind invitation. It's my pleasure to deliver this talk in this session of Indo-French meeting. So what I'm going to talk to you in the next 15-20 minutes is about an area which we started 7-8 years back. This is basically trying to look at nanocatalysis from a point of view with an angle of surface science in mind. So the title of my presentation is Nanocatalysis through Shape and Surface Modulations. So if you look at a nanocatalyst, if you want to define a nanocatalyst, it is it can be simply defined as a metal nanoparticle which is actually supported on a high surface area oxides like silica or titanium. Okay, so some of the main things that we actually look at in a nanocatalyst is basically the size of the particle, metal support interactions, and one of the issues that we generally face is the stability of these nanoparticles because they're having very high surface energy and then tend to move around on the surface, and sintering is one of the issues that nanocatalysts very often has to deal with. Along with that, one of the area that has recently emerged is to look at the morphology and facet dependence. So if you look at a nanoparticle, you can see that there are several active sites that can be possible. One is a terrace kind of a morphology, which is generally formed with a 1-1-1 facet. Then you can also have a step site, corner atoms, kink atoms, and metal support interfaces. So what I'm going to talk to you about in this particular session is trying to look at catalysis with an angle of morphology and facet dependency. The motivation for this work mainly comes from some of the pioneering surface science work that has been done over the past several decades. And one of the work that was it's basically a citation classic is this particular work which was done by Taylor, who talks about the theory of catalytic surfaces, where the concept of active sites was first introduced. There are several other work which has been come in literature, and one particular paper that should need attention is basically the activation of nitrogen, because nitrogen activation is one of the holy grail problems in catalysis. And by looking at with a surface science perspective, this group with Noskov and Kockendorf in Technical University of Denmark, what they have identified is basically the step sites present on a ruthenium is basically the active sites for activating nitrogen. If you try to block these sites with a poison like a gold atom, then the activation barrier is very, very high for the dissociation of nitrogen molecule. So it's a very nice, interesting paper of piece of work that was published in Physical Review Letters in 1999. We also did some work. This was basically trying to look at the activation of molecules on a gold surface. Gold is very interesting because in a bulk form it is not active, and you have to actually really make very small particles to make it catalytically active. So what we found is basically if you have a stepped single crystal surface of gold in the form of 310, then you can actually activate molecules like methanol or nitric oxide and stuff like that. Okay, so if you come back to nanoparticles, nanoparticles can be actually made in different forms. If you try to look at the nanoparticle that you generally make in the lab, these are the form of a icosahedral particle, which looks with a normal TM in a spherical shape. But you can also make particles which are triangular in shape, octahedral in shape, cube shaped particles, and cuboctahedral particles. So these are basically low index faceted nanoparticles, which typically exposes 111, 110, and 100 facets. And each facet has its typical coordination number associated with it. You can also have high energy surfaces, which are having high index, which possesses HKL values which are higher than 1, and then they exposes large density of undercoordinated atoms in the form of steps and kinks, which I mentioned in the previous slide. And such atoms present on the surface can actually have a different electronic and geometric environment, which provides a different kind of an activation barrier for molecules with which it interact. And because of the presence of these defective surface, they can actually show enhanced catalytic activity compared to their low index counterparts. So this has been the motivation behind starting this work when I joined in NCL. And these are some of the representative TM images which I have taken from literature. These are typically from low index faceted nanoparticles like an octahedra or a cube shaped particle. You can also have high index faceted nanoparticle which exposes these defective atoms on the surface. So taking this as an a background, we started looking at the oxidation, carbon monoxide oxidation of gold nanoparticles. The reason why this has been important was because gold is a metal which actually shows strong size dependence. I mean, those who are actually interested in looking at the chemistry of gold, I mean, they are actually advised to look at this particular paper, which was published by Noskov in 1995, where he nicely talks about using a density function theory calculation, why gold has got a different kind of an activation barrier for molecules compared to the other transition metals which are regularly employed for catalysis in the lab. I'm not going to go into the details of the theory behind this particular work. I mean, those who are interested can actually go look into this paper. It's a very nicely written paper, which anybody can understand without much difficulty. So why gold becomes active? I mean, there are several reasons for that. One of the reasons that has been proposed by Haruta and also by Wayne Goodman is the strong size dependence. Okay, so I mean, what happens is, like, when the size becomes less than 10 nanometers, then there is a exponential increase in the catalytic activity. For example, if you're looking at a reaction like carbon monoxide oxidation. So gold supported on reducible oxides like cobalt oxide or iron oxide or titanium, they become excellent catalysts. And the activity can also be because of the strong metal support interaction that gold has with some of these oxides, where the mechanism of carbon monoxide oxidation has been nicely elucidated by Jürgen Böhm from Ulm University in this paper of Journal of Catalysis. So the bottom thing is, if you want to have a catalytically active gold, then the size has to be less than 10 nanometers. So why, I mean, under what circumstances gold becomes catalytically active is the question that we wanted to understand. So to do that, we actually looked at specific faceted gold nanoparticles. So these are called as trisoctahedral nanoparticles of gold, which actually which are high index faceted gold nanoparticles, which carries a lot of undercoordinated sites, a lot of step atoms present on the surface. This is a synthesis methodology that we have formulated. Again, I'm not going to go into the details because of the want of time. And you can actually make this gold nanoparticle and put it on a high surface area support like TiO2 or an inactive support like silica. You can also do an encapsulation where this gold trisoctahedral nanoparticle can actually be encapsulated in the porous silica. You can also do what is called as make an inverse model catalyst, where this gold nanoparticle can actually be supported on a little bit of titanium where this encapsulation happens. So there is a nice interface that is formed between gold and TiO2, and there is an encapsulation of porous silica on top of that. This creates a active metal interface between gold nanoparticle and titanium. These are the microscopic details. Again, I'm not going to go into the detail. Just I wanted to tell that the size of these particles are very, very high. It's around 100 to 110 nanometers. These are way beyond the size in which gold is supposed to show any catalytic activity. And then if you look at the high resolution image, you can see that size of undercoordination on this large trisoctahedral gold nanoparticle. Again, this is the same TM image. I don't want to go into the details. This is an encapsulated gold silica system. So this trisoctahedral gold nanoparticle is actually covered with a porous silica kind of a structure. And the TiO2 that actually makes this interface is clearly evident from this high resolution TM image. Now we do see oxidation activity from these nanoparticles. So this trisoctahedral nanoparticle, which is around 45 nanometers and 110 nanometers, show catalytic activity above 150 degrees Celsius. Whereas if you make a cube-shaped particle or a triangular-shaped particle or a rod-shaped particle, which are not carrying any, which are basically a low-index faceted nanoparticles, they really don't show any catalytic activity under the temperature regime through which we run this particular reaction. So even though the size of these nanoparticles are very, very high, they still can show catalytic activity, which shows that it is basically the undercoordinated sites present on the gold nanoparticle are the ones which are active sites for C oxidation. This is the inverse model catalyst that we made, where you are trying to support it with TiO2, and you can see that it starts to show activity close to room temperature. And around 50 to 60 degrees Celsius, you start seeing carbon monoxide getting converted to CO2. The stability of the catalyst has been studied. So, for example, this encapsulated catalyst, since it is encapsulated, it can prevent sintering, and then it shows very stable conversion at around 150 degrees Celsius throughout the time on stream, which was done for 4 hours. Right. So to conclude this particular section of this presentation, I just wanted to tell you that C oxidation on a is not be structure sensitive. If you make a structure sensitive gold nanoparticle, even if the size is very high, you can actually have reasonably good activity happening or demonstrating from the surface. And encapsulation also helps to maintain the morphology and stability of the nanoparticle, and which means that it actually the active sites are intact, and then it gives a stable conversion throughout the temperature regime as well as the time on stream under which you run these experiments. The inverse systems are found to be active because you create a more metal support interface, and which facilitates the activation of oxygen at these interfaces. Right. So once we have done with gold, we thought looking at palladium. So palladium is also a very interesting system. You can also make such structured nanoparticles, wherein you can make a cube-shaped particle, which again is a low-index faceted nanoparticle. By changing the the experimental condition, you can actually make a concave nanocube. When you make a concave nanocube, it again starts to show these undercoordinated sites on the surface. And we have actually run two reactions with this catalyst. One is basically a C oxidation reaction like what we did previously with the gold nanoparticles, and the other one is Suzuki and Heck coupling reactions. So this again, the synthesis procedure has been reported in nanoscale in 2014. So if anybody is interested, can have a look at the synthesis procedure. Again, electron microscopy has been done to characterize this, and you can see that there is a concave surface that is formed when you actually make a concave palladium nanocubes. And these are the ones which actually carry 310 undercoordinated surface atoms. Now I skip all these things, and then I will show you the catalytic activity. For example, if you run a coupling reaction with this, you clearly see the difference between a low index faceted surface and a high index faceted surface. So for example, we have a concave nanocube with 23 nanometers and 39 nanometers. It shows very high conversion, 95 to 96%. Even 97% in the case of 47 nanometers, 47 nanometer, whereas a palladium nanocube, which is a low index faceted surface, gives only 48%, whereas a normal palladium sphere of the same size like what you have a concave nanocube, it gives only 55%. So again, it clearly demonstrates the facet dependency or the structure sensitivity of these reactions. We also carried out C oxidation. So these are C oxidation run on a palladium concave nanocube supported on magnesium oxide. You also run this reaction with the small palladium nanoparticles, also nanoflowers. Nanoflowers are other class of material which shows very high index surfaces. And clearly, I mean, when you have nanoflowers and concave nanocubes, they have different kinds of reactivity trend, where the conversions reach 100%, close to 200 degrees Celsius. Whereas PD spheres with 35 nanometers, it gives only 30% conversion under 300 degrees Celsius. So again, a clear structure dependency or the facet dependency is being demonstrated here. We also carried out these reactions with different size nanocubes, and you can see that the 47 nanometer cube gives a lower activation barrier compared to slightly smaller particles like 37 and 23 nanometers, which again shows like when the surface carries larger number of undercoordinated sites, the activation barrier is much lower compared to the other ones. Stability of the catalyst has also been done, and then again it shows a very good stability in the first and second run for this particular reaction. These are high temperature reactions, so I mean stability at high temperatures is also demonstrated. These are TM images after the recycled catalyst. You can see that the concave structure is intact even after the high temperature reactions. The last few minutes, I'm going to talk about another area which again using a structured palladium nanoparticles, but this time looking at the phenol hydrogenation to cyclohexanone and cyclohexanol. Again, we have looked at palladium cube, which carries 100 surface, an octahedral particle which carries 111 surface, and a normal spherical particle which carries a mixture of 111, 100, and 110 planes. These are again characterized by, if you look at a normal spherical nanoparticles, if you look at using a Wolf reconstruction, you will see that the major surface is basically 111 surface. 70% is of the nanoparticle carries 111 plane, and then close to 20% will be 100, and rest will be 110 planes. So as I said, the reaction that we carried out is a phenol hydrogenation. It can produce cyclohexanone or cyclohexanol. depending upon what kind of a catalyst that you use, I mean, which transition metal you are using. And we have actually used Palladium Cube, octahedra, and supported on titania to look at this particular reaction. So these are Palladium Cubes, or the colloidal Palladium nanocubes that has been made in the lab. Right, I will just skip all these things, and these are characterizations, which I again don't want to spend too much time. This is the important part. Okay, so you take a palladium sphere, which is 26 nanometers, and you carry out phenol hydrogenation, and within 5 hours you reach 100% conversion. And if you carry out the reaction further to 24 hours, you clearly see a shift in the selectivity. So you can clearly see that cyclohexanone, which is actually formed in the initial hours, it actually goes down and it starts to make cyclohexanone. If you take palladium octahedra, so as I mentioned in my previous slide, a palladium sphere carries 111 and 100 planes, 70% of 111 and 20% of 100. Whereas if you take a palladium octahedra, which carries only 111 surface exclusively, you again see a similar trend like palladium sphere. So you get 100% conversion, and once you carry out the reaction for an extended period of time, the cyclohexanone goes down and cyclohexanone starts to grow, and it reaches 100% selectivity after a certain period of time. Same reaction if you do on a palladium cube with 22 nanometers, you see that again the conversion reaches 100% within 2 to 3 hours, but then the selectivity is intact throughout the 40 hours period that we have run the reaction. There is only a marginal increase in cyclohexanol that is seen, that probably maybe because of the presence of some spherical particles that may be present in the supported system. But more or less what we can say is there is a huge stability for cyclohexanone when you run it on a palladium cube compared to the other two nanostructures. So the difference is basically palladium cube carries only 100 plane, whereas sphere and octahedra carries 111 planes. And we carried out this is a reaction where we try to mimic the spheres, where we mix palladium cube and octahedra in the same proportion that we see in the Wolf reconstruction, 25 palladium cube and 75% of octahedra. And then when we run the reaction, you see that with extended period of time, it actually goes to cyclohexanone. Whereas in a palladium cube, if you try to do a hydrogenation on cyclohexanone, you don't see any conversion happening, because 100 is not really active for cyclohexanone to cyclohexanone conversion. Right, so we have done some theoretical calculation, and I will just tell you that what it tells us is basically on a 100 surface, which is actually given here, there is a high barrier for the further hydrogenation of cyclohexanone compared to the 111 case, where the barrier is only 57 kilojoule per mole, so that it can further hydrogenate to make cyclohexanol. Whereas in this case, that doesn't happen. Right, so summary from these last 15-20 minutes, what I was telling you was a lot of insights has been taken from surface science studies to look at the stepped single crystal surfaces and try to look at the activity correlation on a nanoparticle surfaces of gold, palladium. Ruthenium I did not talk in this particular session, which exposes certain facets, and structure activity correlation has been provided. And this hypothesis of active sites are validated by the surfaces by catalyzing these specific reactions, both in liquid phase as well as gas phase. And these studies can actually is an attempt to bridge the material gap which exists, because in surface science you talk about looking at the single crystals, and in real world catalysis you actually make materials which are a little bit more heterogeneous, whereas if you make structured particles, you know that what kind of facets you are actually exposing, which carry out the reaction. So it's a kind of bridging this material gap that you often explain in surface science. With this, I will end. These are the work which is mainly done by two of my PhD students, Sridhala and Govind. This is my group, which was probably two years back or something. I mean, this is slightly the phases have changed. And I would like to thank CSIR, BRNS, BST, Nanomission, Shell for the funding. And thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Vinod, for giving an overview of your fantastic work on your nano shape and different shapes of nanoparticles and different sizes. So if there are any questions, the session is open for the discussion. Okay, if there are no questions, then I would like to thank again you, Vinod. And then I would like to invite our next speaker of the session, that is Dr. Suman Jain. Just to introduce her briefly, she is a senior principal scientist and head of synthetic chemistry and petrochemical area, material and chemical science division in CSIR, Indian Institute of Petroleum, Dehradun. She has done her PhD in chemistry in synthetic organic chemistry, again from CSIR IIP. She was a Humboldt Fellow and she has worked for her postdoctoral fellowship at Regensburg University, Germany. Her research expertise is in photocatalytic activation and conversion of CO2 to fuels and chemicals, molecular complexes and homogeneous catalysis, photocatalysis for organic transformations, and specialty additives for lubricating formulations and petrochemicals. She has around 250 publications to her credit. Her H index is 46. She has 24 patents, and she has contributed to 6 book chapters. She has a big list of awards, but just to name a few, she has been selected among the 75 leading scientists of India under the age of 50 by DST and SERB. She is on editorial board of many journals. She has been awarded SERB Women Excellence Award by DST in 2013. She was awarded INSA Professor DS Kothari Chair Award in 2017-18. And she was also awarded Hindustan Platinum Award for Catalysis Society of India in 2007. Today, she will be talking to us on semiconductor metal complex hybrid as efficient material for photoelectrocatalytic PEC reduction of CO2 to chemicals. So over to you, Suman.
Thank you, Dr. Shubhangi, for the kind introduction. So first of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizers and Dr. Shubhangi for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to present my work. So today, my talk will be on semiconductor metal complex hybrids as efficient materials that we are using for our recent research work for CO2 activation under the ambient conditions. So it is the brief introduction about the subject. Actually, we know that energy and environment both are the major concern in the recent decades. So mainly environmental concerns related to the increasing concentration of the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So we know that fossil fuel combustion is the main contributor for this CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. And apart from that, cement industry, deforestation, and these are some of the ways by with these they are responsible for increasing the concentration of CO2. So this increasing concentration of carbon dioxide is a big concern for us because it is increasing the temperature of the earth, that is called the global warming, and as well as CO2 is being acidic in nature, so it is acidifying our oceans. So it is affecting the life, our flora and fauna and everything. So it is a major concern what we can do with this carbon dioxide means higher concentration of carbon dioxide, how can we mitigate and how we can manage it. So there are conventional ways to capture the carbon dioxide and to store it. But if we are capturing the carbon dioxide, it is a well-known technologies are there, but it is a very costly technologies for the capturing. And if we are storing the carbon dioxide, there are several risks. Environmental risk in future of the leakage, if in the future sometimes leakage happens, then on the other hand, if we are dumping something, means we are wasting a valuable feedstock. So our main focus is on the utilization of the carbon dioxide for the production of chemicals. Because if we look at the carbon dioxide chemistry, it's a C1 feedstock, and we can convert it into any chemical or any organic compound that we want. But carbon dioxide being a linear molecule, it has some drawbacks, like it is a highly active molecule, chemically inactive molecule, and its thermodynamic and kinetic stability is very, very high. So activation of carbon dioxide requires a lot of energy. And so processes are energy intensive processes are known. So our focus is using the renewable energy sources. So our main focus is on the photocatalytic reduction or photocatalytic activation of the carbon dioxide, where we are using the visible light in place of the, or we can use the solar light for the activation of carbon dioxide under the ambient conditions. So if we look at the future perspective of the carbon dioxide, today only few chemicals are industrially produced from the CO2, like urea, salicylaldehyde, and the routes which are well known for technology, the technology which are known for CO2 utilization are thermal. However, in short term, we look at the scenario that carbon dioxide mitigation is possible only when we start producing the fuels with the addition of the chemicals. If we look at the medium term, or if we look at the long term, the carbon dioxide mitigation could be successful only if we can start converting into the fuel, so that we can establish a carbon cycle. For conversion of the carbon dioxide into the fuels, not only thermal, other techniques like electrochemical, photocatalytic, photoelectrochemical, these routes are also gaining interest in the recent years, and but these studies are basically confined to the laboratory level. So our main interest is on the photocatalytic activation of the carbon dioxide. So, but some of the main barriers, as I said earlier, is CO2 capture, separation, purification. It's a very, very costly process. CO2 is having a higher thermodynamic and kinetic stability. So it is a very inactive molecule, and its activation or conversion requires a lot of energy. And some of the lack of industrial commitments, like most of the that organic chemicals or industrial chemicals, they have well established technologies using the carbon monoxide. So switching a feedstock from carbon monoxide to carbon dioxide, it's really a very good very difficult task and a challenging issue. So these are some barriers. So if we look at the strategies for the CO2 reduction, apart from the thermal, in thermal, if we can provide a thermal energy, we can convert the carbon dioxide at higher temperatures, but they have some obvious drawbacks like coke deposition and conversions are low, and other side products which may enhance the CO2 emission more rather than its conversion. So if we talk about the mild conditions or ambient conditions, we can provide the energy in the form of photon, that is called the photochemical activation. If we can provide the energy in the form of electricity, that is called the electrochemical. If we can combine both the things, like we can use the photon and partial energy we can provide by the electricity, that is called the photoelectrochemical. So today my talk is focused on the photoelectrochemical reduction of the carbon dioxide. Before going to the technical presentation or our work, I would like to give a brief of our ongoing project. This is the Indo-French collaborative project that is awarded by the CEFIPRA. Our collaborator is Professor Rabha from University of Lille. We are having a very successful collaboration for last more than 9 or 10 years, and published more than 25 articles together. So we have very good established collaboration, and we are working in the we are having the complementary expertise. Like we are working on the homogeneous catalysis, molecular complexes. However, Professor Rabha is mainly working on the semiconducting supports. So we are using those supports for immobilizing our complexes for the conversion, or for seeing the possibilities for the conversion of carbon dioxide. So the major objective of this project work is to design and synthesize the low-cost metal complexes like copper, zinc, cobalt, and iron, and screening and designing of some of the semiconducting supports. And after that, immobilization or combination of both the things to convert or to transform the molecular complexes to their heterogeneous forms. And after that, evolution of these complexes for the photocatalysis as well as the photoelectrocatalysis. So our main research area is focused on the molecular complexes. Why we are interested in the molecular complexes? Because as we know that molecular complexes, they have central metal as well as the ligand. So extended conjugation and ligand make them highly visible active. They can easily absorb in the visible light. Also, the central metal can bind with the carbon dioxide. So the binding of the carbon dioxide with this metal increase the concentration of the CO2 for its conversion. So with this reason, because we know that in the solar light only 5% is the UV light and other 45% is the visible light. So success of the photocatalysis depend on the materials that can absorb the visible light and that can work under the visible light. So therefore we are using these complexes. But as we know that these complexes have some drawbacks, like they are homogeneous in nature, and they also are very prone for the photodegradation. So due to the homogeneous nature, we cannot recover these complexes, and photodegradation is also possible because these ligands are the organic molecules. So it is always a possibility for the degradation of these ligand molecules in the during the reaction or during the photocatalysis. So this is the general mechanism how these catalysts work. They absorb the light and they get excited and they take the electrons, and these electrons are used for the CO2 reduction. And for molecular complexes, they always require sacrificial electron donors. But when we combine these complexes with the semiconducting supports, there are two advantages. One advantage is that we are transforming the homogeneous complexes to their heterogeneous forms, so that we can easily recover them after the reaction. And other thing is that we are not using any sacrificial electron donor. So by immobilizing the complexes to the semiconducting support is not only providing the heterogeneous system that is very easy to handle, that those are stable, we are not observing any photo degradation, any leaching, and all the materials are successfully recovered and recycled for few cycles, and as well as we are not using any sacrificial electron donor. Basically, this is some a mechanism like this is our sensitizer. We are using the molecular complexes as a sensitizer, so they are absorbing the light and they provide the electrons to the conduction band of the semiconductor. So at the conduction band, these electrons are used for the CO2 reduction. However, the holes used for the oxidation reaction, and this system completes by this way. This completes the redox cycle. So, like molecular complexes, they are increasing the efficiency because they are acting as an antenna. They are continuously pumping the electrons to the conduction band. So some of the systems which we have recently developed, like we developed the cobalt phthalocyanine complexes grafted on graphene oxide. So this is the graphene oxide, this is cobalt phthalocyanine. For increasing the oxygen functionalities, we functionalize this support and then immobilize this covalently. This is the covalently immobilized system. That system was completely that analyzed or characterized by several techniques, and we successfully synthesized and characterized it. Like XPS and the band gap. If we look at the band gap values, like band gap value in the hybrid system, it is the band gap values decreasing, means the immobilization is also further decreasing the band gap of the material, which is increasing the visible light activity. So if we look at the photoelectrochemical properties of these materials, we can see that higher current density is observed in case of the hybrid materials. Similarly, this Mott-Schottky plot is showing that n-type semiconductor is there, and our reduction potential is minus 0.39, that is higher than the this CO2 reduction. So the material is is feasible for the CO2 reduction activities. So similarly, if we look at the impedance spectroscopy, this lower arc is showing the inhibited or the minimum recombination of the electron hole pair and the availability of the charge carriers for the reduction reactions. Similarly, if we look at the PL, the hybrid system is showing the minimum recombination of the electron hole pairs, means the electrons and holes are available for the desired reactions. So if we look at the performance of this material should give the format with the rate of 2.35 millimole per hour in the CO2 saturated with this potassium bicarbonate solution. If we compare our system with the literature known systems, we can see clearly that the system that we have developed is found to be more efficient than the prior art methods. Similarly, this is the reaction product, how we analyze the product by the HNMR by using the standard internal standard. And this is the reaction, basically reaction mechanism. These electrons are provided by the graphene oxide. They are coming to the complex, and complex is bound to the carbon dioxide that is converting into the format. So this is the another system that we recently developed. It is using the copper-based MOF that we supported in the graphene oxide and copper oxide support. This is the synthesis, general synthetic scheme for the material synthesis. This is the characterization. If we look at that, the band gap values by using the UV, by the top plots, we determined the band gap values, and our hybrid system showed the lowest band gap than its constituted components, that is showing its higher visible light activity. So similarly, if we look at the photoelectrochemical properties, we can see that hybrid material, our ternary hybrid, it is showing the higher that current density. It is also showing the less electron hole pair recombination, means the hybrid material is much more efficient for the reaction rather than its other compositions as well as the constituted elements or components. So in this reaction, we selectively obtained the ethanol as the product from the CO2 with this rate, and the products were identified by the NMR. Further experiments and theoretical studies to establish the mechanism of the reaction are under process. because due to the COVID, due to the lockdowns and lab were not properly functioning, so the studies were hampered. But now our work is going fine. So I hope we will soon complete this work with having the established mechanism and with the designing and fine tuning of the chemical material for further development of the methodology for selective conversion of CO2 to ethanol or higher alcohols. So if we look at the literature, only few systems are known which are providing the alcohols, but our system is selectively providing the ethanol that is not reported in the literature with the much more higher efficiency, Faraday efficiency, rather than the literature one. So we can, with this work, we established a hypothesis that when we are combining the molecular complexes with the semiconducting supports, we are not getting the higher, we are not only getting the higher efficiency, but also product selectivity is higher. Like in some cases, we are getting the formic acid or formate selectively. In other cases, we are getting the alcohol selectively. So we have done a lot of work on the photocatalysis, and recently we started the work on photoelectrocatalysis. So with all these work is basically focused with the using the materials of the hybrid kind of things, which are prepared by combination of the homogeneous complexes with the photoactive supports. So as we know that energy crisis and threats for global warming is accelerating due to the increasing concentration of carbon dioxide. The stability of carbon dioxide is a major challenge that can be managed with the use of renewable energy sources like photocatalysis, electrocatalysis, etc. And the main mitigation or how the CO2 management can be only possible when we start converting the CO2 into the fuel, because a very small portion can be converted into the chemicals that cannot manage the overall concentration of the CO2 that is present in our atmosphere. So we need to establish a carbon cycle by converting the CO2 into the fuel. A lot of semiconducting materials are mainly reported in the literature, but they have some drawbacks, like they are having the electron hole pair recombinations and convergence are low and selectivity are poor. So with our research, with our 10-year experience, we could conclude that immobilization of homogeneous complexes with the photoactive supports can provide a viable solution for designing some materials that really can convert into the carbon dioxide into the desired chemical at some higher scale. So this is all about my talk. Other than this, I would like to inform that I'm serving as a associate editor of the New Journal of Chemistry. That is a multidisciplinary journal. So I would like to request to all researchers who are participating in this conference or this workshop, please submit your articles. I would like to acknowledge the organizers of the KS3, our director, funding agencies, my research team, and research collaborators. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Suman, for giving an overview of your Indo-French collaborative project. It's a fantastic piece of work. So any questions?
I will. Good afternoon. So Andrei Kodako, I will ask you questions. I have two questions. First questions, you say that you can reach almost 100% selectivity for some reactions. So what are typical selectivities if you make, for example, ethanol from CO2, formic acid, I could understand it's 100%, yes? What is approximately the range of selectivities which you obtain in the reaction which you study?
Actually, I'm not getting your question properly.
Sorry, maybe the question about the selectivities.
Yeah.
So you said that sometimes you can obtain 100% selectivities.
Yeah.
Can you tell for which reaction you obtain 100% selectivity and what is the selectivity for other reaction which you studied?
Yeah, actually the selectivity is basically depend on the central metal. If we are using the copper-based catalyst, they are giving the alcohols. That is supported by the literature, because and if we are using the metals like cobalt and zinc, they are selectively converting the CO2 into the formic acid or formate. So it is basically depends on the nature of metal which we are using for the synthesis of a material.
Maybe Suman, he wants to know that what is the selectivity for your ethanol. That was his major concern. So
yeah.
what is the best
reaction?
Yeah, for ethanol from
ethanol, we selectively obtained the ethanol. We did not observe any formation of any other alcohol in the reaction mixture, because We analyzed the crude reaction mixture by the GCMS as well as NMR. So selectively we obtained the ethanol. In the gaseous phase, a minute quantity of the carbon monoxide was present. Rest there was only oxygen and hydrogen was there.
Okay, so thank you very much. I have second questions about the stability, because stability is always important for catalysis. So for how many hours can you run this reaction? For how many hours, how many days can this catalyst be stable?
Yeah, we did not check the stability of reaction by performing the long reactions, but we recovered the photocatalyst and we we performed the recyclability runs for 3 or 4 cycles. We performed the reactions using the recovered material, and that conversion and the selectivity remained almost same. However, after the 3rd or 4th cycle, it decreased significantly, maybe due to the photo deposition of the small molecules on the support, or I don't know the reason.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
For nice presentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, thanks a lot, Suman, for the fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Now I request the next speaker of our session, that is Professor Andre Kodako. And just to introduce him briefly, Andre has graduated from the Moscow State University in 1987. He received his PhD degree in 1991 from the Russian Academy of Sciences, and he did his habilitation degree in 2002 from the University of Lille. In 1992 to 99, he acquired experience in top academic and industrial institutions in the United States, in France, and in UK. Currently, he is a senior CNRS research director in the UCCS CNRS laboratory in the University of Lille and Central Lille Institute. He is interested in the C1 chemistry, methane, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and biomass transformation using new synthetic spectroscopic reaction engineering and modeling tools. His research focuses on sustainable catalysis and on the development of low energy consumption processes operating under mild condition. Today, he will be talking to us on CO2 hydrogenation to light olefins over ion catalyst, efficient promoters, and reaction paths. So over to Andre.
Yeah, okay, so thank you very much for a nice presentation, and also thank you for this opportunity to give a talk at this workshop. And my talk also kind of relevant to the previous talk because it's also focused on CO2 conversion, CO2 valorization to, in this case, to light olefins by thermocatalysis. So, and this work I'm presenting today is the results of collaboration between our laboratory in Lille and also University of Ghent, and also have groups in Technical University of Delft and the University of Rouen who also contributed to this work. So first, I just remind you some importance of CO2 valorization, CO2 conversion, because we have very high carbon dioxide level in our atmosphere, which is increasing each year, which results in greenhouse effect and all these undesirable phenomena which can be relevant to carbon dioxide. And currently, if we talk about CO2 conversion, CO2 to decrease amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, there are two strategies. One is carbon capture and storage, and second is carbon capture and utilization. And our work as a chemist and chemical engineers is focused on carbon capture and utilization, and in particular, we are searching for new commercial ways for chemical valorization of carbon dioxide. And in this point of view, so this is just general information which can be obtained from carbon dioxide especially by hydrogenation reaction. Of course, hydrogen for hydrogenation reaction should be produced from, should be sustainable hydrogen, should be produced from renewable feedstock. So we can see that from carbon dioxide, we can obtain a wide range of product. So it's carbon monoxide with important chemical intermediates, methanol, methane can be used for energy storage, formic acid, dimethyl ester, alcohol, and hydrocarbons. And in particular, in this work, we have been interested in synthesis of light olefins from carbon dioxide, because light olefins is called building block of all chemical industries, actually the most important chemical platform molecules. So, and the methodology which we are using in our work was, of course, it's direct CO2 hydrogenation based on a Fischer-Tropsch approach. So in fact, we have been using iron catalysts, because iron catalysts are well-known catalysts for Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, but differently to Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, because Fischer-Tropsch synthesis involves CO syngas, CO and hydrogen. For CO2 hydrogenation, we have to go through, say, reverse water gas shift reaction. So it means that we have to first to convert CO2 to CO. So by reverse water gas shift reaction of CO2 with hydrogen. And then, of course, we follow so by Fischer-Tropsch synthesis and produce light olefins. So, of course, the catalyst has to be more complex than the catalyst we use for conventional Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, because it's combination of several reactions. Of course, it can be contain maybe different promoters, different components. So the goal of our work was, of course, we started with iron catalyst, and we were searching for new promoters to enhance the selectivity. And also at the same time, we have conducted a large number of experiments I will show in my presentation, and we try to see the reaction path which occurs during CO2 hydrogenation. So this actually, these two types of information we give will lead us to the design of new efficient process for light olefin synthesis. And here is a strategy which we're using for this research. So I would like to tell you a few words about high throughput experimentation. So high throughput experimentation, we have this equipment in our lab. It's actually a center for high throughput experimentation. And this is, for example, for catalysis, we use Avantium Florence unit setup. So Avantium is a company, and we bought the setup, and it's located in RealCAD platform. It allows conducting simultaneously, test simultaneously 16 catalysts at the same time. So it's a powerful tool for the design of new efficient heterogeneous catalysts. And also it's allow identification of efficient promoters and selectivity trend. And also it's very helpful because in the literature, of course, if we search literature, we find a large number of papers. They focus on CO2 hydrogenation with different promoters. The problem is that sometimes it's different to compare because the promoter we added is different amounts, and also the catalyst synthesis, catalyst test, catalyst activation, which is very important for the catalyst, have been conducted under different conditions. And of course, we cannot compare which promoter is the best because, I mean, we can only compare the things that can be compared. However, it was for that reason, we have to test in our setup, we can test a large number of catalysts. We know how they were prepared, and also we can test in the same condition of activation of catalytic reaction. So this is a strategy which has been used for this work. So of course, we have to choose the promoters. So promoters, of course, it's on the basic of the literature of our scientific, say, intuition. We tested a lot of promoters. In this work, we tested 15 promoters, 15 elements exactly as promoters for CO2 hydrogenation, but in total, we tested about 30 catalysts for that, because some catalysts have been promoted with 2 elements. And also, we're thinking these were supported catalysts, because it means that nanoparticles of iron and also promoters were dispersed on porous support. And if we see the literature for CO2 hydrogenation, zirconium dioxide is one of the best promoters because it has low, it has relatively high basicity and low hydrophility, because if you have very hydrophilic support, for example, such as alumina, and we produce a lot of water during the reactions, the support can be, can be damaged after running reaction for a long time. So here the promoters which have been used. So it's first is Soldering promoters, it means the metals with, there are some people who would like to enter. Okay. So there are several promoters, soldering promoters, which can be used. These are the metal with relatively low melting point. These promoters were very efficient for conventional Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, and also testing basic promoters such as potassium, cesium, barium, and also a significant number of transition metal promoters. And also, I mean, the strong point of our work is that they prepared the catalyst with the same molar concentration of the promoter. So we use 10% of iron, and then we all the time prepared the catalyst with promoter where the ratio of iron to promoter was 50. So in most cases. So, and here is methodology how we prepare the catalyst. So we prepared by impregnation using zirconia and added a solution of iron nitrate and promoter. So then evaporation to dryness, and then of course the catalyst will dried and calcined 500 degrees. So typically the ratio for metal promoter was 50, so 100 to 2. And we also very fast, we found that potassium is very important promoter. And for all catalysts, I will see the results on the next slides. For that, after optimization, we found that the best amount of potassium, the catalyst should be 1%. So this is a catalyst which don't contain potassium, so only different elements. The ratio of iron to promoter is 50. And we also studied a series of promoters with potassium, 1% of potassium, and the ratio is 50. So 29 catalysts were tested here. So here's the experimental procedure which was used. So we have activation. So it's all the time the same for all catalysts, for all tests, because we conducted 2 high throughput tests. The activation in CO, because it was optimized during our previous work. And also we have test at 10 bars with different gas phase velocity. By changing gas phase velocity, we change contact time, change the conversion, and we can see variation of selectivity as a function of conversion. So this is actually the activity results which we obtain. So what we can see here that the most significant increase in activity comes when we add potassium as promoter. So also similar results to some extent, but slightly smaller with cesium. So basically this alkaline metals. However, for other elements, of course, there is some modification of activity, but effect, I would say, not maybe so much significant. But what was most interesting for us maybe is not even the activity, but the selectivity. And when we conducted this reaction, CO2 was converted to CO, light olefins, methane, light paraffins, and C5 hydrocarbons. I mean, long chain hydrocarbons, typically C5 to C10 carbon atoms. And on the next slide, I show the results we obtained for these different catalysts. So first, the selectivity trend. First, you see CO2. So we obtained a lot of experimental data. You see here, we see CO selectivity as a function of CO2 conversion. So basically, the CO selectivity decreases as a function of conversion. And if we extrapolate the selectivity to 0 conversion, we reach something about 100%. So this actually suggests that CO, as we already said in the introduction, is the primary product of this reaction. That when we have CO2 hydrogenation on iron catalyst, CO2 is first hydrogenated to CO. Then we see the same thing for methane. For methane, this is actually selectivity to methane without considering CO production. So we see that methane also decreases with conversion. So if we go to 0, so we reach maybe 70, 80%. So, and what we also see that if we use a catalyst promoted with potassium, the production of methane decreases compared to the same catalyst which don't contain potassium. The next slide show, say maybe the most interesting result, which we obtain relevant to selectivity to light olefins. And what was found here, there are 2 trends. First trend was observed for the catalyst which don't contain potassium. So this is, so here the selectivity to light olefins was relatively low, I would say between 5 and 10%. And also it doesn't depend on the conversion. It remains almost the same. However, for the catalyst promoted with potassium, which contains, of course, different elements, there is this trend. So the selectivity is initially higher. And however, of course, it decreases when we increase the conversion. And then after analysis of this data, we selected, say, the most efficient catalyst. Actually, it's the same, but however, selected the most efficient catalyst, which we, for this catalyst, we did a lot of characterization to understand why the catalysts are good. So it's basically, so this is a reference one without, any promoter. So this is with potassium, and these other catalysts, they contain cesium, copper, gallium, molybdenum, cerium. So these catalysts, they correspond here to the top, say, it's the top part of the dependence on selectivity on conversion. So then the results were obtained for paraffin selectivity. So also here there are two trends. Here the top trend is for the catalyst which were not promoted with potassium. So we see if the catalyst was not promoted with potassium, the selectivity to paraffins increases as a function of conversion. However, for the catalysts which were promoted with potassium, contain different elements, we have almost stable selectivity to paraffins. So what happens on this catalyst? On this catalyst, when we increase the conversion, you see that light olefin selectivity decreases. However, at the same time, we have increase in selectivity to long chain hydrocarbons. So for that, we suggest that there are different paths. What happens on the catalyst without and with potassium. So without potassium, if we increase the conversion, we produce light paraffins. With the catalyst with potassium, we produce long chain hydrocarbons. So here, after analysis, we summarize here the reaction path. So for the catalyst with potassium, first we have conversion of CO2 to CO. Then, of course, production of monomer on the surface, which can give methane. Then oligomerization on surface oligomerization, we produce light olefins. However, when we increase the conversion, we increase the chain growth and produce long chain hydrocarbons. But if we don't have potassium, situation is different. So you see that we also produce CO, produce C1 monomers, produce olefins. But however, the most important, if we increase the conversion, what happens is monomers, there is no chain growth, but there is mostly hydrogenation to the paraffins. So on the next slide, so we studied stability. So we see that compared to the reference catalyst, so this is the reference catalyst for iron and silica, we have increase in stability. The catalysts are getting more stable. And also compared to that, with, if we compare it's the same conversion, so 29–30%, we have so under similar condition, because it's important to have similar conversion, we have the highest selectivity on potassium molybdenum catalyst. So the selectivity finally is improved, can be improved by addition of potassium and also addition of molybdenum. So that seems to be the best catalyst so far. Then we did characterization, and what we found. So first, this is conducted in situ with Bauer spectroscopy to study the state of iron. What we found that all catalysts contain significant amount of iron carbides. So, however, the high amount, so we can see here, was obtained for potassium molybdenum catalyst. We also see the presence of iron carbide by X-ray diffraction of the spent catalyst. So here you see the peaks, which correspond actually to different types of iron carbides. So it means that the iron under reaction condition exists in the form of iron carbide. Then we followed iron dispersion. It means iron nanoparticle size using scanning transmission electron microscopy with analysis, ADX analysis. And what we found, if we compare our catalyst to the reference, this catalyst, so which we did analysis for several catalysts, we found that the addition of promoters, so for example, especially potassium, results in significant increase in iron dispersion. If we have histogram of particle size, we have decrease in particle size from 20 to 11, 14, 11 nanometers. So there is the effect of especially promotion of potassium is higher iron dispersion. The second, another characterization was absorption of CO2 to measure the basicity of the catalyst. And of course, we see that, of course, zirconia has already basicity. When we add potassium, for example, here with cesium, we have significant increase of basicity. However, so when we add the second element, so the second element mediates the basicity. For example, some elements increase the basicity, second promoters increase this basicity, however, can slightly reduce. However, in all cases, we have very pronounced basicity of the catalyst. And also TPR, for TPR, what we found in TPR, that for the most catalyst, second promotion actually results in slightly poor, say, reducibility, with exception for copper. For copper, we have significant improvement of iron reducibility in the presence of copper. So now I would like to go to the conclusion. So what we obtain in this work, we identify so new promoters for zirconia supported iron catalysts for CO2 hydrogenation, and we conduct significant amount of catalytic tests using high throughput experimentation approach. And what we found actually, what is the parameters which can be improved in, say, in the most selective catalyst. We have better iron dispersion, we can have enhanced iron carbonization, and we need optimized basicity, maybe not say the highest basicity, but optimized basicity. So all of them have higher basicity compared to reference catalyst, but so maybe not the best basicity is needed. And then we observe two different trends for light olefin selectivity on CO conversion. We have two classes of the catalyst, with potassium and without potassium. With potassium, so the selectivity is low and practically independent on CO conversion. And for iron catalyst containing potassium, alkaline elements, and second promoters, we can clearly see, I mean, maybe 3 times, 4 times, 5 times higher selectivity. However, the selectivity is decreases with conversion, and because of further polymerization of production of long chain hydrocarbons. So, and what actually with results, new promoters, and with combination with new information reduction mechanism can provide new paths for design, new process for light olefin synthesis from CO2 on iron catalyst. So, and at the end of the work, I would like to thank, of course, so the funding, our collaboration, especially with Ghent University, and also the funding from the project for European interregional project Interreg between France and Belgium, which funded PhD thesis and postdoc who work on this project. Also, of course, our institutions, and also I would like the members of our group for their help in an interesting discussion. And also, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Andrew, for this fantastic talk. It is open for discussion. Maybe because of the want of time, we can take 1 or 2 questions. Okay, if there are no questions, then I would like to thank Andrew again. And with this, I would like to invite our next speaker of the session, that is Professor Vivek Polshettiwal. To introduce him, he is an associate professor in Department of Chemical Sciences, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, TIFR. He finished his PhD in 2005, and he worked as after that he worked as a postdoctoral fellow in France and USA for a few years before starting his own independent group at KAUST in 2009. In 2013, he came back to India and he moved to TIFR. And his group is working on the development of novel nanomaterials as catalysts to tackle climate change. He has published nearly 115 articles and with the H index of 55 and around 13,500 citations in reputed journals. He is a recipient of, he has many awards. I will just read out few. He is a recipient of the prestigious ORISE Research Fellowship at US EPA. He was awarded as a top 25 cited author in 2011 by Tetrahedron and Young Scientist Award at DSL 2012. He has received the Asian Ring Star Lecturership at 15th Asian Chemical Congress, Singapore. And also in 2015, he was admitted as a Fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry, UK. He was awarded a bronze medal by the Chemical Research Society of India. He was also recognized as an emerging investigator, material science, and 175 Faces of Chemistry by Royal Society of Chemistry, UK. He was also awarded the prestigious Material Research Society of India Medal. He was elected as a fellow of Maharashtra Academy of Sciences, and he received Young Research Award in Nanoscience and Technology from DST. So he will be today talking to us on nanotechnology to combat climate change. So over to you, Vivek.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shubhangi, for such a kind introduction and also giving the opportunity for me to present our work. So today I will talk about our recent work where we use some of the nanomaterials for harvesting the solar light and also catalyzing some of the reaction, including the CO2 catalysis. And then in the second part, I will talk about some of the work that we did with Professor Oliver Lefan via the Indo-French CEPIFRA collaboration. So we wanted to develop a material, nanomaterial, which has two functions. One, it can absorb or it can harvest the solar energy, absorb the solar photon, and ideally convert the excited electrons. We call them hot electrons. At the same time, you also have some sort of active site in these hybrid material so that you can then activate CO2 or hydrogen and convert those into useful chemicals and fuels. So how do I design a material which can harvest the light? Semiconducting material is one of the way. The other possible mechanism by which material can harvest the light is surface plasmon resonance. You know, some of the materials at a nanoscale, for example, gold or silver or copper, the electron cloud of these nanoparticles resonate with one particular wavelength of the light based on the particle size and particular electron cloud. And that resonance is called surface plasmon resonance. And when these surface plasmon resonances get damped, you absorb all that energy and damped onto the surface particle. And when that damping happens, when the plasmon damping happens, that entire solar energy then used to excite the electron from the Fermi level to some higher Fermi level, say through S2S transition or D2S transition. D2S transitions are preferred because of the better lifetime or lifetime. However, these are called hot electrons because they are now at excited higher Fermi levels. So these excited electrons or hot electrons can ideally be used to inject into the CO2 molecule, and you create a CO2 radical anion, and then you follow the next step of CO2 reduction. However, the lifetime of these hot electrons are a few femtoseconds, so ideally you may not be able to use them. But during the relaxation processes, these hot electrons then again undergo collision with the electron at the Fermi level. And because of this electron-electron collision, you create some sort of a secondary population of hot electrons known as hot Fermi-Dirac distribution. And these hot electrons has a better lifetime and can be used to inject into the CO2 or some other reactant during the catalysis. If I cannot also use this hot electrons, then the third phenomenon happens, which is these electrons undergo electron phonon coupling and lose all that energy in the form of a heat, and you create some sort of localized heating of the surface, and we call them a thermal hotspot. And then one can use these thermal hotspots to carry out a thermal reaction. So it's like you're using a photon to create an isolated thermal energy onto the catalytic surface directly, which will then allow us to carry out a catalytic reaction, thermal catalytic reaction. So how do I now synthesize a material which will harvest the light as well as act as a heterogeneous catalyst? That means it should have a high surface area and better porosity. So we decided to just load the gold nanoparticle onto the silica surface, a high surface area silica surface. And this is one of the material that we have developed in our lab. This is a dendritic fibrous nanosilica, DFNS, where one can tune the particle size from say 50 nanometer to 1200 nanometer, excellent surface area, thermal stability, mechanical stability. That means I can use it for high temperature, high pressure processes, and it's easy to synthesize. Recently, we wrote this nature protocol where we gave a stepwise synthesis, including the videos, and now one can synthesize this in any lab in a large quantity. And before I really explain the catalysis part, I just also want to explain in brief how we synthesize these materials, what is the formation mechanism of dendritic fibrous nanosilica. So this is the templated synthesis. We use this CDAB as a template molecule, a surfactant molecule, and we know whenever we add the surfactant into a solvent, they try to form a micelles, the normal reverse, or if the concentration is higher, they also form the lamellar micelles. So I will show you the animation. So these are the template molecule. Blue ball is your quaternary nitrogen, and the zigzag line is your CS2, this hydrophobic C16 chain. Now we added them into a solvent, which is a mixture of xylene and water, so polar, non-polar, and the concentration of these molecules is such that they form these lamellar phases and form some sort of a random lamellar phase. And then we added one more core surfactant, the pentanol or hexanol, which stabilizes these interfaces by minimizing the repulsion between the quaternary nitrogens. And what we observe is that these are not floating flat into the solvent system, but they are in the form of a droplet. They are in the form of a bicontinuous microemulsion droplet, BFDs. So these droplets, which is made up of water, xylene, and the CTAM, are our reactor, our nanoreactor. And the water channels that you see, there we have the silica precursor TEOS and urea, which when heated converts into ammonium hydroxide, and then you hydrolyze the TEOS within the channel. So by the channel width of these droplets will give us, which will dictate the thickness of the silica sheets, and the overall size of the droplet decide the overall size of the DFNS nanoparticle. We learn to merge them together so that I can get a bigger DFNS particle. We also know how to then keep them away by simply changing some reaction condition to get a smaller DFNS nanoparticles. Right, this material is now being used worldwide for a range of applications, including catalysis and CO2 mitigation, in drug delivery, sensors, energy storage. Although it is silica, but this is silica which can be functionalized by any organic molecule, can be coated by semiconductor, metal can be made metallic, can be made hydrophobic, hydrophilic. So that's why you see a large number of applications of this material in different fields. Now, coming back to the question that I was trying to ask, that how do I design a material which absorbs entire sunlight and at the same time also catalytically active? So we wanted to use the surface plasma resonance properties of the gold. But if I simply take the gold nanoparticle and load onto the silica, something like this, the light absorption is like this orange curve, where light is around 560 nanometer is the lambda max, and some weak absorption in other part of the visible and near ion. What we really wanted, if we really want to develop a good photocatalyst, then the first condition is that it should absorb large number of photons at all the wavelengths. So some sort of a broadband light absorption that we needed from visible to near ion. The question is, how do I tune the light absorption? So, and there is a concept which is, if I can tune the distances between the gold nanoparticle, then the electron cloud of these gold nanoparticles couple with each other, known as plasmonic coupling, and that plasmonic coupling allows you to have a broadband light absorption. Now the question is, how do I tune the distances between the particles? I can change the size, shape, morphology. We had some very nice presentation where we know that others who knows how to change the shape, morphology. But how do I change the distance? That too onto the solid support, because I want to develop heterogeneous catalyst. So our hypothesis was that first let us load the silica sphere with the seeds of the gold nanoparticle. So these silica spheres, DFNS is made up of these sheets or fibers. So you load these gold nanoparticle by a conventional method. And then in the second step, you control the nucleation growth such a way that you only grow the existing gold nanoparticle without creating a new gold nanoparticle. That way, what will happen at every cycle, I keep increasing the size of the gold nanoparticle, and you can see now the gaps between the gold nanoparticles are decreasing. That's what we wanted. We wanted to tune the gaps between the gold nanoparticles. Obviously, theoretically, they will all grow at a similar kinetics, but in reality, it will not, because silica is heterogeneous. It has this dendritic structure, so the gold nanoparticle which is inside will receive less amount of gold precursor as compared to a gold nanoparticle out to the surface. So we had some sort of heterogeneity in the gold nanoparticle, but heterogeneity in terms of plasmonic system is a good thing, because more the heterogeneous system, you have more number of hotspots that you can use to carry out the catalysis. So you see the TEM images. This is the C0 small gold nanoparticle dispersed onto the silica surface, and then we have C1, C2, C3, C4. I'm just showing some representative. And you see when you go from C0 to C1 to C3, C4 to C6, the particles are coming closer, they are getting crowded, and at C6, in fact, they started connecting. Even at C4, some of them are connected. So our C4 is there very close, whereas C6, they are connected. So now we wanted to know which one is the best material, because we never know, we was not knowing that what is the perfect, the optimized gap between the particle that is needed for better light absorption and the catalysis. So that's why we prepared a range of these materials, and then we try to study them for light absorption behavior first. And now you can see This is C0, C1. Typically, just looking at them by your eyes, you can see now the color changed, and you got black color gold. So it's still a gold, metallic gold, no change in the oxidation state, no doping, no functionalization. It's just the gap between the particle that allowed them to undergo plasmonic coupling, and you can now see the light absorption behavior. So with cycle increase, you see now it becomes a broadband light absorption from visible to near IR light. So that means now you can harvest large number of solar photons, and then those solar photons can be either converted into hot electrons or the heat. We wanted to test whether we really produce the heat. What is the surface temperature that one can achieve when these hot electrons undergo a relaxation by electron phonon coupling? So then the question is, how do I measure the surface temperature of a nanoparticle? We're at a nanoscale, so I cannot really use the typical thermometry to understand the surface temperature. So then there is a technique called Raman Thermometry, which monitors the Stokes and anti-Stokes lines in the source. We know that if the molecule is thermally excited, then you will have a more population in higher vibrational states. And if that is the case, I will get a more anti-Stokes lines. So by taking the ratio of anti-Stokes versus Stokes lines, all of these are constant, you can get temperature T. There are always some assumptions, so we call them a semi-quantitative, but still one of the best methods reported till date to get the surface temperature. So using this Raman thermometry, we found that the surface temperature of these nanoparticles can go up to 150 degrees Celsius. Again, there is heterogeneity because materials are heterogeneous, but you are in the range of 120 to 150 if I look at C4 material. Again, these numbers can be different if I change the light intensity, if I change the light wavelength, these numbers can even be more. Right? Theory says it can go up to 400 degrees Celsius. We also wanted to see the electromagnetic, like the electromagnetic hotspot, we also wanted to see the thermal hotspot. So, sorry, like the thermal hotspot, we wanted to see the electromagnetic hotspot. So for that, we did the SIRS, and we observed that C4 has the highest excitation, enhancement of the signal, the CS excitation assigned to 1073 centimeter inverse, and you see C4 has highest intense signal. That means it is enhancing the SIRS signal the best, and that indicates that it has more number of electromagnetic hotspots as compared to C3, C6, and C1. So we also want to visualize these hotspots. So we did the EELS mapping, electron energy loss spectroscopy mapping, and the brightness of the orange color indicate the intensity of the signal. So you can see when the particles are coming closer and closer, the whole particles, you see they are becoming brighter and brighter. But when the particles connected with each other, that brightness went down because now you want a gap between them to have these hotspots. Otherwise, there will be no hotspot. So these STEM-Ls also indicate that by tuning the gaps, one can tune the plasmonic intensity of plasmonic hotspot, the electromagnetic hotspot intensities. Okay. Then we wanted to see whether we can use these materials for catalysis. So first, the simple reaction that we carried out is alcohol oxidation. So this is the alcohol, and then you DPCCX is the black gold, dendritic plasmonic collidosome with different cycles, and oxygen was the oxidant. And you can see now dark versus light. Let us say C4 dark is around 25%, and in light it is around 90%. So why you have a better activity in light as compared to dark? The simple answer could be maybe you have a higher temperature because this electron phonon coupling produces the heat. But then we carried out the reaction at the temperature at so when the reaction mixture was heated by the light, exposed by the light, then reaction mixture got heated. So we measured that temperature, and then we carried out the reaction in the dark at that temperature so that you normalize the impact of the temperature. So this data is in both the cases at the same temperature, clearly indicating that it is not the temperature but something else that is the cause of the better activity when I use a light. So what could be that cause? What could be the reason for better activity? So hypothesis was that when I expose the catalyst with light, you produce these hot electrons. These hot electrons can then injected into the oxygen, and you dissociate the oxygen, right? So and And if you dissociate the oxygen, dissociate the oxygen will be a better oxidizing agent than it will increase the kinetics of the reaction. Now, how do I prove this hypothesis? So what we did, we added more and more photon onto the catalyst so that more and more hot electrons will be produced, and these hot electrons will then dissociate more number of oxygen, and kinetics should increase. So more photons, that means light, by increasing the light intensity, you see 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, we increase the light intensity, and you see the kinetics also increase linearly with increase in the light intensity, clearly indicating that it is the hot electron assisted O2 dissociation that is the cause for the better activity in light as compared to in the dark, because you cannot really have electron assisted dissociation in dark. We also explored this material, this catalyst for CO2 reduction, which was the main project, and we reacted CO2 with water using the black gold and the xenon lamp visible near IR light, and we were able to convert the C4 surprisingly convert CO2 to methane, and with a yield of 1.5 micromole per gram, which is 10 times better if I just take a simple gold nanoparticle. So clearly indicating the impact of plasmonics, the hotspots in increasing the catalytic activity. Unfortunately, the yield is as such is very low. 1.5 micromole is extremely low. So one has to really improve the yield and this can be done by improving the lifetime of the material, lifetime of the hot electrons, and that is something we're working on. I will quickly, so I have another 2-3 minutes, I will quickly touch upon the other work that we do in our lab. So this is one of the material where we created the defects in the silica, and we created oxygen vacancies in the silica, and then CO2, oxygen of the CO2 sees that oxygen vacancy, go and sit, and then there are Si radicals and O radicals, which will then activate the CO2 and dissociate the hydrogen. So this is one of the metal-free catalysts that one can use. We also showed use of magnesium to convert CO2 to fuel, CO2 to methane, methanol, formic acid, and cement. This works at room temperature. Don't need any hydrogen source, just water. The only drawback is the magnesium gets converted into magnesium basic carbonate, which has its own value. It's a value-added product. However, we're trying to now see whether I can regenerate the magnesium back by magnesium basic carbonate. This is another example where we prepare solid acid, which acidity close to the zeolite, but it is a mesoporous material. So that allows us to then even degrade the bigger molecule, macromolecule, like a plastic polymers. And also, we also use the same material for CO2 to DME directly. We also worked on CO2 capture, so low temperature CO2 capture, as well as a high temperature CO2 capture, which could be the first step to take on the climate change. And quickly, in another 1 minute, I will show you some of the work that we do. We did with our Indo-French collaboration. So we have a collaboration with Professor Oliver Lefon from University of Lille. So Oliver is expert in soil NMR, and especially the DNP enhanced NMR, which we don't have it in India. So we together wrote a project this long back, and we wanted to use the DNP expertise of Oliver to understand the mechanism of our catalyst that we developed in our lab. And using these technique, first we answered this question that if I treat the silica with ammonia, you create you replace the silanol with amines, different kinds of amine, primary, secondary, tertiary, and we explained that it has to be primary and secondary amine if you want to get a good specificity rather than the tertiary amine. This was very debatable, but then we used this solid NMR and DNP enhanced NMR to really prove that it is the primary and secondary amine which are the cause of the basicity rather than the tertiary amine. These amines are connected with silicon. Then we also recently showed that boron nitride and oxide-coated DFNS can act as a very good oxidative dehydrogenation catalyst, and we use the 2D NMR to really understand what is the real catalytic site in these catalysts. In another material, the semiconducting-based photocatalyst, we use the DNP NMR as well as the in situ IR study to understand how the surface of the silica is reacting with the TiO2 precursor and how the TiO2 is really getting coated. And we also again are trying to understand what are the active sites, catalytic active sites, and why our material is better catalyst as compared to another conventional TiO2 material. With that, I'd like to conclude. I showed you the DFNS new material, new sort of catalyst or sorbent support. I also showed you use of black gold for light harvesting and CO2 reduction, use of magnesium, amorphous zeolite, and creating the defects. I'm sorry for rushing because the talk is very short, so I was rushing a bit. With that, I'd like to thank you. Thank you, Shubhangi, again for the opportunity, and I'd like to thank Indo-French CEPIFRA for the funding.
Thanks a lot, Vivek, for the fantastic work which you have shown. So any questions?
Yeah, I have one question. Yeah.
Yes, Vinod.
Vivek, very nice work. I was really impressed about this plasmonic thing, and then you talked about this oxygen dissociation being the reason why you get improved activity. So how do you actually tune this basically? Like you said, I mean, it has to go to the antibonding orbital for dissociation, or I mean, how do you tune the energy so that? I mean, the reason why I'm asking is because there is some big project which was actually going on in Denmark for activating nitrogen using the similar concept, hot electrons. But there they were actually trying to look at the matching energies of these hot electrons. Yeah.
Yes. So luckily here we did not tune any energy levels, like whatever, because see here you get a different energy level based on what type of light wavelength you add, right? Because an electron can go to even higher and higher excited states.
Yeah.
Right. So some of them will definitely get transferred to the oxygen. In oxygen case, it was a very efficient transfer. That's why we got a very good conversion. Whereas the same electron was not getting transferred to the CO2, right? So there we don't think it's the energy level that matter, but it's more about how efficiently CO2 molecule really absorb onto the gold, and gold is not that great material for CO2 to chemisorb, right? So we are now improving that, transferring the gold electron to say nickel, and nickel has a very good ability to chemisorb the CO2, right? So here we never thought about tuning the energy levels. You can tune by simply playing with the size of the gold nanoparticle, right?
Yeah.
That's what people have done for the platinum, where they change the size and that gives you different Fermi levels, and some of that can transfer the electron.
Yeah, again, like so nitrogen activation, if it can be done with such materials, it would be fantastic.
We tried, but it's not that easy, right? Nitrogen activation, it doesn't sit onto the gold. We're still trying, but it's not working yet. Yeah.
Right. Good. Thanks,
Vinod.
So Andre, do you have a question?
Question also, just to continue, because it's very nice discussion, a very nice presentation. I'm also interested about using plasmonic effect for catalysis. First, as you already told, that you need to separate thermal effect and catalytic effect, because sometimes it's not very easy. Yes, indeed. And then you showed that it can be used for oxidation reaction, because to activate oxygen is not so difficult, I would say. So what is your kind of, what do you think? Can plasmonic effects can be mostly used for oxidation reaction, or can be used for hydrogenation reaction? Because you showed hydrogenation is still not very good, I would say. What is the perspective of this plasmonic effect in catalysis?
Yes, I think it's a very interesting question. I will say this way, that wherever you need the electron, right? I think all of that reaction can ideally be catalyzed by these hot electrons. It could be oxidation or it could be a reduction reaction. Although the result I showed you about CO2 reduction, the yield was low, but then now we have a new results, which is under review, where we were able to tune the catalyst such a way that you can do a very good CO2 reduction. So it was not about the plasmonic catalyst itself. It was about the lifetime of that hot electrons, which was shorter than required for injecting into the CO2. So if you increase the lifetime of that electron, then you can do a reduction reaction. That's what we are currently doing. And you are also right that it's very difficult to separate the thermal effect and so-called plasmonic effect. In some cases you can, right? Like if you are doing some Fe3 plus to Fe2 plus reaction, this doesn't happen by the thermal energy. It has to be by the electron transfer. So we in another work that we have recently did, we did prove that there are in some cases both the things are impacting, the thermal effect and the hot electrons. In some cases only hot electrons, and in some cases it's only the isolated heat.
Okay, so thank you very much. Very nice.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If no, then maybe I have one or two questions, Vivek.
Yes, sure.
So when see your CO2 to methane, you are saying, so you are doing it only in water. So maybe so your methane yields are low. So, but if you use hydrogen, are you finding it improved? Because
Yes.
if it's fantastic result, I mean, even if you use hydrogen, it will be preferred.
Yes, Shubhangi, that's the project I was talking to. This is a work under revision. This is exactly what we did. We did a solid gas reaction instead of water. Then we used the hydrogen gas and the CO2, and still you can use these hot electrons. So it worked like anything. So if I have a hydrogen gas, the yield is 100 times better, more than 100 times better. I will share that paper soon.
Oh, that is great. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, I would like to thank Vivek you again and stay back for the panel discussion.
Yes, I will.
So we have the last speaker of the session today, who is Dr. M.V. Madhav Sharma. He has a startup company called Yajushi Laboratories in Hyderabad, and he is formerly chief scientist from CSIR IICT Hyderabad. So he served IICT for 31 years, and his research interests are synthesis of natural products, carbohydrates, polymers, also on new drug discovery. Also, he has an interest in biomass and synthesis of bio-based chemicals. During his tenure in IICT, he has guided around 52 PhD students. He has around 230 publications, 15 patents, 1 book, 5 book chapters, and he has around more than 25 national and international collaborations. He also has a big list of scientific awards and achievements, but just to name 1 or 2, in 2010, he got OPPI Scientist Award. In 2009, he got AP Scientist Award. He got Ranbaxy Research Award. He got Nasi Reliance Platinum Jubilee Award, CSIR Young Scientist Award. He's a fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry, and he's also fellow of National Academy of Sciences. So today he will be talking to us on synthetic applications of bisphosphonates and metal-mediated reactions. So just give me a second. I will share the presentation for you. Okay, Dr. Sharma, go ahead. I will change the slides as per your wish. Yeah.
I can change the slides now.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see the slides.
Yeah, 22nd slide.
Yeah, now we are on the second slide. Boron and its importance.
No.
You want previous or you want next?
Yeah, first slide. Thank you, madam, for your kind introduction as well as invitation to attend this workshop. I'll be presenting our results on bisphosphonates and their utility in organic synthesis, the preparation of amino acids, aromatic compounds and heteroaromatic compounds having nitrogen and sulfur compounds. Most of these compounds are useful for the synthesis of biologically active natural products as well as drug discovery, materials, and other aspects of science. Coming to chemistry, boron, organoboron compounds are ideal towards green chemistry since they are non-toxic to plants and materials. Though boron was discovered in 1800, its first pure form was produced in 1900s, and boron has nice medicinal applications. You can find here there are drugs that contain boron as part of their structures, like as I presented here, Velcade, tavaborole, crisaborole, and other compounds approved by FDA, and they are in the market. And hydroboration of olefins was reported by Professor Brown in 1956, and antimorganic of hydration also has been done, while Suzuki Mayur I have presented a boron-mediated CC bond forming reaction under the catalysis of palladium in 1979. Next, please. Next, madam. Yeah, boronic acids are. Can I go back?
Is it okay, or you want me to go back?
Yeah, this slide. Boronic
This one or
acids.
next
Next.
Yeah.
Boronic acids and their derivatives are very useful building blocks in organic synthesis. However, they have a couple of major problems, like the boronic acids are in equilibrium with its cyclic forms, as well as their interaction with silica gel. To avoid such problems, several boron masking protecting groups have been developed, and a variety of derivatives have been prepared for boronic acids, which are classified based on the R group as alkyl, alkenyl, alkynyl, and other systems. Next. In addition to boronic acids, diboron and polyboron containing reagents also have been reported. The diboron compounds were reported in 1925. Many times the di and polyboron compounds are masked at the boron level, and they then will be very well differentiated in their reactivities towards the coming reagents. Here, one example I have shown here, the Suzuki-Moira coupling, where you have an inactive boron and active inert boron and an active boron. Over here, the active boron undergoes a CC bond forming reaction, while the inert boron will be taken for further reaction in the next step. Next, please. Here I have presented a few classes of boron-containing compounds. 1,2-diboryl alkanes. Similarly, we have 1,1-diboryl alkanes as well as 1,1-diboryl alkenes. In a similar way, we have 1,2-diboryl alkanes as well as 1,2-diboryl alkenes. If we replace one of these boron protecting groups, like we have two bipins in all these systems, the middle one in 1A I have shown a slide where we have one is bipin and one is bdan. The structures of them have been shown on the top. Thereby, we can differentiate the reactivity of these two boron groups in this boron reagent. Next. Next, madam. The bipin bisboronates can be easily prepared from terminal acetylenes or internal acetylenes by the reaction of bis penacaloto diboron in the presence of platinum catalyst very efficiently, and they give these bisboronates in excellent yields. Next, please. This is how the bisboronates are formed. Firstly, bis penacaloto diboron, oxidatively platinum adds onto that, and to give 1B on reaction with internal or terminal acetylenes react to form the vinyl platinum complex, and which undergoes direct elimination to give bisboronates. Next, please. Though the conversion of alkanes to bisboronates is reported in 1993, not much work has been reported other than metal catalyzed cross-coupling reactions or Suzuki-Moira reactions. And as I mentioned earlier, differently protected diborons, other than bis penacaloto diboron, will allow the internal selective cross-coupling reaction. When you look at the bipin and bdan, bdan is more sterically hindered, so the internal bipin undergoes reaction to give selectivity. Next, please. Next, ma'am. Here I have shown some some of the synthetic transformations by making use of BPIN. By the time we started our work on bisboronates, after looking at the literature and since a lot of work was going on in our groups on the synthesis of natural and unnatural amino acids, we thought of using bisboronates for the preparation of amino acids. Thereby, we proposed to carry out a boron-amine catalysis reaction on these bisboronates to get amino acids and amino esters. Next, please. Catalysis reaction is nothing but a managed condensation of boronic acid, glyoxylic acid, and in the presence of amine to give beta gamma unsaturated amino acids. Several boronic acid derivatives are used in catalysis reaction. However, the vinyl boronic acids are more reactive when compared to all the other reagents. Next, please. This can be attributed to the easy formation of the 8 complex shown on the left hand side with the boronic acids, unlike with the masked boron systems, boronates, where the formation of such a complex is more difficult. Thereby, the yields are very poor in these systems. Next, please. We have, having seen the literature and reactivity of these systems, we have initiated our work. Firstly, by the synthesis of variety of bisboronate esters, and these bisboronate esters were subjected to catalysis reaction using glyoxylic acid and different amines to get the acid. The acid was then in situ converted to methyl ester on treatment with diazomethane. Here we have used hexafluoroisopropanol as a solvent in this reaction. Unlike the reported literature reported solvents, methanol and THF, here we observed the formation of better results, wherein we assume HFIP is supporting in the formation of ionic intermediates and the stabilization of the polar transition states. I shown here variety of different amines were utilized for the condensation in the catalysis reaction, as well as different side chains. Alkynes were used for the preparation of bisboronates to get the condensation products in 50 to 60% of yields. And interestingly, the catalysis reaction has occurred at the terminal BPIN bond, leaving the internal BPIN untouched, even after a longer duration of time. Next, please. Then these amino esters are subjected for the Suzuki reaction, making use of gamma boronated systems. And in the presence of palladium as a catalyst to get the catalysis Suzuki products exclusively with very good yields. And this is the first report on catalysis reaction making use of bisboronates. Similarly, the catalysis reaction has occurred only at the terminal C boron bond, leaving the internal boron C boron bond untouched, and catalyst products underwent facile Suzuki couplings to give the amino acid systems. Next. The internal BPIN bond was used not only for Suzuki reactions, it was converted to vinyl azide and used under click reaction. Similarly, it was subjected to oxidation to gamma keto amino acids. Next, please. Next. Yeah, of the application of bisboronates for successful conversion into catalysis Suzuki products. Then we thought of doing a reversal of this sequence. First doing Suzuki at the terminal C-boron bond and petasis reaction on the internal CB bond. However, in the earlier work, we observed the internal C-boron bond was not touched during the petasis reaction. Here we went ahead with the formation of Suzuki products at the terminal C-boron bond under the standard reaction conditions, making use of palladium catalyst to get variety of Suzuki products. Next, please. These Suzuki products are then subjected to petasis reaction using standard reaction conditions in hexafluoroisopropanolyzed solvent. To our surprise, interestingly, the very longer duration of time, around 78 hours of reaction time, the internal C-boron bond also has reacted and formed the petasis product to give the amino acids in very good yields. Next. Here, what I have shown you is making use of the bipins, 1A, bisboronates. Firstly, we have converted the terminal C-boron bond into petasis product, that's an amino acid, then subjected it to Suzuki. Similar way, the C-terminal terminal C-boron bond was converted into Suzuki product first, and then reversing the sequence, the petasis reaction was utilized at the internal C-boron bond to get two different kinds of amino esters to create libraries of compounds. Having successfully completed the two sequences, petasis followed by Suzuki, then Suzuki followed by petasis, it was then thought about how about going for an internal intramolecular petasis reaction to form cyclic, aromatic and heteroaromatic systems. Next, please. So in this direction, what we have done is we have subjected the bisboronates to Suzuki reaction with aryl bromides having a formyl group in them. So we have used the 2-bromoaldehydes, substituted 2-bromoaldehydes in the Suzuki coupling reactions, and we made a variety of Suzuki products having a formyl group in these systems in 50 to 75% yields under standard conditions. Then having prepared the substrates for the intramolecular petasis reaction. Next, please. Yeah. These systems are subjected to intramolecular petasis reaction in the presence of amines and hexafluoroisopropanolyzed solvent at room temperature. Nicely, successfully, they gave the 1-amino 1H indines with excellent yields. The reaction time, the reaction went very well at room temperature in 8 hours of time. This method was adaptable even for 1 gram scale. We have used the bisboronate 1D to convert it into Suzuki product 2N, and which then was subjected to intermolecular petasis reaction to give indene 3V in 71% yield. Next, please. The mechanism for the formation of amino indines, amine forms the iminium ion, which undergoes a quaternization to give 8 complex. This 8 complex, after migration of alkenyl moiety, undergoes cyclization to give 1-amino indines. After successfully completing the synthesis of indines, we then thought of making use of intramolecular cyclization reactions for various other products like isoquinones and other systems, wherein we thought of using such Suzuki products with formyl group, convert them into vinyl azides through oxidation and subject them to azabatic reaction to give cyclic products. Next, please. Is some of the natural products that are containing isoquinoline moiety. Next, please. Next. Yeah, this is the reaction sequence. Firstly, take bisphosphonates subject to Suzuki reaction, either aryl bromides or heteroaryl bromides, convert them to vinyl azides through copper catalyzed sodium azide reaction, then subject these vinyl azide systems to azabatic reaction to give the expected aromatic systems. So firstly, the bisphosphonates were converted to Suzuki products, wherein the internal CV bond remains intact. Here we have used internal olefins, internal alkyl also for the bipene formation. Next, please. These are the examples of Suzuki products which were made with different substituents and aromatic rings. Both phenyl and naphthyl ring systems have been utilized. Next, please. The Suzuki products on further reaction with sodium azide in presence of copper sulfate in methanol gave the vinyl azides, again without much of difficulty. Reaction was good and compounds were very stable. Next, please. Then the thus prepared vinyl azides were subjected to a reaction with triethyl phosphite in THF at room temperature for 30 minutes. Then after the evolution of nitrogen, again one more mole of triethyl phosphate was added and heated it around 35-40 degrees for additional 1.5 hours to get the isoclinoline systems in excellent yields. Next, please. Yeah, firstly, the probable mechanism is the vinyl azide undergoes the addition of triethyl phosphate to give phosphosite. This phosphosite, after the ejection of nitrogen, forms the iminophosphorane. This on cyclization by azabatic reaction results in the formation of isoquinolines. Next. Same synthetic sequence was applied for the preparation of thione-2,3-C pyridines. Since these are important biologically active structural features in natural products, so making use of the same synthetic methodology, in place of aryl aldehydes, we have used thiophenolaldehyde subjected to Suzuki reaction to give the Suzuki products with different side chains on the bipene. These Suzuki products were subjected to acidation to give the corresponding vinyl azides. These vinyl azides were on further reaction with triethyl phosphate gave the thione-2,3-C pyridines. The fused pyridine systems were obtained in an excellent yield. Next, please. Having made quinolines, isoquinolines and thione fused pyridines, then we try to verify the functional group tolerance. Like earlier, we have used the aldehyde group for the cyclization. The next, what we thought is making use of an ester or a ketone or amide. So when we, in that direction, we have done the Suzuki reaction with aryl bromides having ester, acetyl and amide groups. The Suzuki products were obtained in 50 to 60% yield. These Suzuki products were then converted to vinyl azides, followed by cyclization. though the ester and ketone containing compounds underwent cyclization, the amide containing Suzuki vinyl azide did not give the expected product. Making use of this methodology, we undertook the synthesis of quinizocane, which is a biologically active natural product. To make that natural product, we have taken orthobromobenzoic acid esterified with N-dimethyl aminoethanol, 2Z. This Suzuki product was obtained from bisphoronate, which was then converted to vinyl azide, and the vinyl azide and further azavitic reaction gave quinizocane, numbered as 4Z, in 85% yield. So this methodology was adaptable for the synthesis of natural product. Next, please. In conclusion, summary, what I would like to say is bisphorates were 1,2-bisphorates were utilized for the synthesis of several natural products. This work reported the first petasis reaction on the bisphorates, followed by a Suzuki coupling to give amino esters. A reverse of sequence, Suzuki followed by petasis, also were conducted to give diverse amino esters. Molecular petasis reaction has been successfully utilized for the formation of cyclic aromatic compounds, and Suzuki followed by copper catalyzed azidation and azavitic gave isoquinolenes, fused pyridines. And this methodology was used for the synthesis of bioactive natural product like quinacosane, and several other such systems can be made using these reagents. And other applications from bisphorates is in progress in our laboratories. Next. Yeah, I worked on 2 Indo-French products. The first one was from 2008 to 2011. My collaborators are Professor Bruno, Dr. Matthew Achard, Professor Dixna from University of Rennes, and of course the first project, Bhaskar Sundar Raju, who worked is a faculty in IIT Kanpur now. My colleague Dr. Sridhar was from IICT. T. Sridhar and Veena both are PhD students, and they are abroad. And the second Semipro project we continued from 2014 to 17. Again, we worked with Dr. Bruno, Dr. Achard, and Mr. Sahu was the PhD student from University of Rennes. Here, my other partner was Dr. Surisetti Suresh. Of course, students Murugesh, Lalita, and others have completed their PhDs. Now, next slide. The third whatever work I presented here is from the Indo-French Joint Laboratory for Sustainable Chemistry between CNRS and CSIR-IICT. Collaborators from University Rennes, again, Dr. Carboni, as well as Dr. Fabier Berry. Here, my collaborator is Dr. Subhash Ghosh, or T. Sridhar also worked in this project. Mr. Jairam and Maruti have completed their PhDs and working in industry. Thank you all for your kind patience, and once again, thank you for the invitation.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Sharma. Are there any questions? Okay, if there are no more questions, then I would like to thank Dr. Sharma once again. And just to wrap up the session before we start with the panel discussion, I would like to thank all the speakers, and really the research work which they have presented has shown that the synthesis and different materials with control on size, shape, and distance, and its application for green chemistry, like using renewable resources or conventional methods, mainly for specialty chemicals, also for CO2 conversion to value-added products, and contributed. It has really shown the contribution to the green chemistry. Now I would like to invite all of you, all the speakers for this panel discussion on a possible technological exchanges between India and France in green chemistry, catalysis, and materials, maybe, because initial title was very broad, so we can restrict our discussion to these things. And I would like to request all of you to switch on your videos. And just to give a background why I chose this topic was like, a lot of work is going on fundamental research between India and France, and a lot of publications, a lot of projects are there on academic collaborations. So while this session was going on, I just browsed through the CEFIPRA web homepage, where they have shown the list of proposals or list of projects approved under academic collaborations as well as on industrial collaboration. And I could not see, at least presently ongoing, any project which is there in the field of like green chemistry or chemistry, catalysis, materials. So I think this is really something which we should take it forward. When all the speakers today, they have active collaboration going on with India, France. So can we work on something? So I will just give you two examples which we already have, or which are come up as a byproduct of our Indo-French collaboration. And one of them is like Lille University or UCCS group has developed a process for hydrogen generation or reforming of ethanol to hydrogen generation, and they have established a lab scale process. But now if you look at this kind of processes where it may not be economical in France, but when we have ethanol much cheaper in India, this can be really a economically viable process for India. Whereas there is a second example where we have like part of the process, or still it is a lab, we are not yet gone further, where our group, we have worked on a sucrose hydrolysis to glucose and fructose. And there is next steps which are like, which is developed by a group in UCCS again, where they have a very good process for isomerization of glucose to fructose, and then further value addition to fructose. So these are sort of two cases where there is a technology already lab scale developed by one country or one lab, and it can be taken up further by the second country, or which is viable in second thing, and there can be a joint development. So with respect to this, I wanted to take 3 questions one by one, but maybe due to want of time, I will just put forth the questions at a time, and then all of you can give your views on that. So what are the research areas or topic mainly in catalysis or materials or green chemistry where you feel that India-France collaboration can develop some joint technologies? Second is, what kind of mechanism or support is or will be needed or will be desired for taking it further? Like, we develop something on the lab scale, but when you want to take it to really to some industry, there has to be some mechanism, some funding, some support from some higher authorities or some funding agencies which can provide such funding. And what do you think that in such cases participation of industries can be at what stage? Because apart from CEFIPRA, there is no other mechanism or agency where industry participation can be done from the level 0 or from the beginning. So maybe I would like to start with Andre.
Indeed, I think we can collaborate in different areas. So, and today already, of course, sustainable chemistry, I think, seems to be the way we can do it. And I would say that this topic can be, say, biomass conversion, of course, and also now it's, I would say, what I'm personally interested. So I think it's conversion of CO2, maybe conversion of, we can also conversion of methane can be, interesting topic for us. And in terms of mechanism, because I'm not very familiar with CEFRA because I never applied for this project. So this year maybe we'll try to do it. So I don't know all these aspects. But I think in France we also have so-called National Agency for Research, and there are collaborative projects which can be submitted with different countries, but for that there should be agreement between France, for example, India, and this actually I mean the budget can be different depending on the fund, because each partner funded by by the country. For example, French partners funded by France and India by French. So, but this can be, kind of an additional platform for collaboration, I would say. And also, if, of course, then your question about industry. So for that, we need to attract, of course, companies to participate in this collaboration. So this can be done on both sides. So, and maybe special call, which involves academic laboratories and companies, because it can be considered a special call. I know there are, like on European level, there are European projects, for example, Europe, Japan, or Europe, Brazil, which I aware, and they ask that in addition to universities, there should be participation of companies from both sides. So this, this is just first idea which I have about possible collaboration mechanism.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. So maybe next, Vivek, you want to say something? You are working mainly on a lot of fundamental research. So how do you want to take it further if you want to go for some application or some industrial applications?
Yes, Shubhangita, I agree that we need to take it to the next level. Just publishing the paper is not going to solve the climate change problem by any means. So then the question is, how do I really take the science in the lab, which is done at a very small scale, at a really minute scale, to the next level, to the commercial level? So I think first problem that we generally face, the bottleneck we have is upscaling, right? Showing at a bigger scale. You need some sort of a pilot plant, a kilo lab, or a bigger reactor where you can really test whether these materials can really work at that scale. And if that is happening, then I think you need a collaboration with engineers, right? The reactor design, the life cycle assessment. I think that will push our research towards the commercialization. If we continue collaborating among us, we will continue publishing the paper, which we have to do. Obviously, we need to do in-depth fundamental research, but I think it's time to also take it to the next level. And I agree with Andrew that we need some sort of a special call, which is about upscaling, life cycle assessment, and taking towards commercialization rather than the fundamental research. That only we can do it. Otherwise, most of the projects tend to go towards the publication.
Okay. Thank you, Vivek. Maybe Christoph, you want to go next? I will take up Dr. Dongre at the end, but so yeah, Christoph, next to you.
Well, yes, upscaling is a main barrier, yes. And so far, I've not solved the problem myself, but I didn't have so much candidates to switch to upscale time level. But yeah, well, as Andre said, well, we may need other panels structures for French-India collaborations. I mean, he said ANR, international calls, be from France possibilities, but so far I've not seen anything like this. To complete CEFIPRA initiatives, yes, and that way the ANR framework of French would allow, in fact, to have industrial partners and build up bigger projects, indeed, bigger projects than CEFIPRA projects or CNRS IEA projects or even SHARPAC projects, which are much smaller projects. So this is really the next scale. And yes, industry, this is always the key point and problem. We have to get interest from catch their interest and their support. It's not always easy in France anyway, and I don't have myself solutions regarding this scaling barrier.
Yeah, I mean, getting industry support in India is also not very easy. because they are waiting. Like, I mean, once you have something ready, then they show interest. They really don't show much interest during the development, where really the inputs for industries are needed. So yeah, you're really right. So we know.
But sorry, but the key point, I don't know in India, but in France, it's very pragmatic. They have a problem, they want a solution straight, so they collaborate with academia. That's it, and they want to solve it like a snap, like this. This is they don't invest for the future 10, 20 years. It's
no, it's a government job.
It's exactly same in India. They want this like this, and that is not possible in science, right?
yeah. So afterwards, well, okay, make a paper because you got the money, makes a paper, and then well, we shall see if we collaborate in the future. That's it. Well, I experienced this, yes, in my young career. But so this is really the key problem for, well, we cannot rely on all government agencies to solve the problems for the future, but there are specific programs, okay, but yes, we would like more support from key companies also, yes, indeed.
Just maybe, of course, I agree with Christophe, and so, but because usually it's very difficult for, I mean, if you have large companies, they have their own policies, sometimes they agree, don't agree, so it's very complicated. But in fact, for, I mean, to go to higher scale in terms of from the laboratory, we can maybe consider creating like joint French-Indian startup with students. Because this may be a good idea that from French students and Indian students, they work together. And of course, they cannot build maybe very huge plant, but they can go to the next level of development. This, if they give some, maybe not a lot of money, but maybe, I mean, 3 students from each side, they can work together. This will be kind of, I think, more, I mean, dynamic, because with big companies, it's very complicated. As Christophe said, it's especially if you say with Indian partners, it will be, I mean, a lot of paperwork. So, and finally, I don't know what's, maybe no results in the end. So, but a small startup may be more kind of flexible in terms of collaboration. Or this kind.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea. So Vinod, are you there? May not be. Suman, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Yeah.
Yeah, you can give your views on that. I mean, what do you feel about this?
Actually, I agree with the other I agree with the other participants regarding the collaboration. Actually, we all are working with the basic sciences, and we really want to develop some methods and some processes that can help us on the practical level. But it's very challenging, because as we being a CSIR worker, we know that it is very difficult to get the industrial support and industrial sponsored projects. Although we have several meetings and several presentations, but in real it is very difficult to get. Similarly, I am also agree with the Vivek, like we are also having the problem with the reactors, and I am specifically we are working, means we have developed a lot of processes which are new, but due to the lack of engineering support and other things, infrastructure available, we are confined to the laboratory scale only. But I'm looking for the collaborations with our other laboratories, and we are having some projects, collaborative projects, and in future we really hope to have something really practical or commercial in this regard. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Suman. So Dr. Sharma?
A few things to add here. Firstly, instead of discussing about fundamental thing is, as he said rightly, engineers have to be with us, but not only engineers, chemistry, synthesis, catalysis, and engineering people should be together. Because the problem here is, for example, I know I want to convert glucose to pyridine, but I do not know how to make such a catalyst. Engineer comes next. Okay, probably there is there should be a better understanding amongst the chemists of catalysis, specialization, and synthesis. And day one onwards, we should have the support of engineers so that we understand the engineering issues and problems when we move little bit forward. Coming to biomass, compared to petroleum versus biomass, this is oxygen. Removal of oxygen is the major thing. Now, when you look at the literature, the catalysts, zeolite-based catalysts doped with gallium, zinc, metal oxides, more or less the same stuff is being used even for biomass conversion into chemicals and other things. So definitely there is a huge opportunity for catalysis scientists. I do not have any idea on what they say is whatever catalysts you are using more or less in the literature is based on petroleum catalysts. So that's really a great challenge. How best we can remove oxygen without converting it into water so that we don't lose hydrogen, or we need not add hydrogen, making the process economically not viable. At the same time, carbon dioxide. Of course, people have presented, people are struggling to convert carbon dioxide into something. Again, of course, biomass to chemicals is nothing but biomass 70% is carbohydrates. So at the base level, in the laboratories, biomass conversion, if you equate, most of it is carbohydrates. We can look at carbohydrates and say this is your model. Carbohydrates or furan derivatives are your models, and see how best we can convert them into chemical. Again, it's a great challenge for catalysis. So this is people come in the picture, but development of catalysts. So really, this is when you come to biomass, that's the only option for future. Biomass is 80% of it is carbohydrates and plenty available world over. So unlike the other renewable resources, yes, definitely biomass is the best renewable resource, and there is a huge challenge for catalysis people to look into it. Of course, chemists, engineers, everyone together, but there where it starts. It starts with chemistry and then goes engineering and designing and other aspects come. So that's what is my feeling. Looking for, say, for example, today in Europe, a lot of work is going on, academy, industry, and institutions are working together for biomass conversions to chemicals, aromatics, and other things. And now, almost in 2025, first commercial product is likely to come. Kind of things, BioOrigin is working very seriously. So many companies are working. I do not have much knowledge in India what is happening in that. That's a, as he said rightly, looking forward for the next future of 20 years, 15 years. Look for something. But since instead of saying something for industry, they'll be interested in their market value. So governments should be convinced for money for the right kind of projects. That's what I feel. Of course, I'm a retired person and nicely I can tell so many things. The 30 years experience, so many issues we have faced, and younger generation should try to push a little more forcefully. Very energetic youngsters are there. Times have changed and things are happening in a better way. So I feel biomass as a renewable resource, say take for example sugarcane bagasse. don't think only converting it into ethanol. That can never be a commercially viable thing. Since government gives subsidy and today we need ethanol, we might be making. How about making use of glucose that is obtained from cellulose of sugarcane bagasse? Really very challenging problem. Maybe you all can give a very good thought. People like me will definitely assist you. I'm 100% available for any kind of assistance activity. Even I can take up some synthetic work in our laboratory. That's not an issue. Whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Yeah, thank you for your views. So now, last word, Dr. Nongre. What is your view on this?
Thanks for inviting me to participate in this seminar as well as in the panel discussion. I have heard the panelists, their views. Somehow, you see, I retired in 2011 and for the last 10 years, I am interacting with industry. And what I have seen, even as rightly Dr. Shubhangi said, that you see, French people, particularly scientists, they are very good in fundamental research as well as their measurements are so accurate. I have seen because I'm interacting with Lille University for the last 15-20 years. Beautiful facilities, and they can conclude certain things and new phenomena. For example, we are working with Christoph on hydrogenation using Shubhangi's catalyst, and he has come out with a beautiful paper, and they have worked on something like 15 to 20 or more substates where the conversion and selectivity is very high. Now, if you want to really work with the industry, then this is the time to find out at least one molecule and talk to industry first. Talk to industry whether which molecule out of these 20 they are interested. You see, we scientists somehow do not talk to industry. For example, sometime back we worked with Arkema in France. One professor, Dr. Dubois, you must be knowing, he visited NCL. We gave a presentation and he picked up a very good molecule. And we worked with him under CEPIPRA with industry. We worked for 3 years. We got a patent out of it. Apart from that, this was on delignification. And now similar kind of things we are doing in Dr. Shubhangi on bagasse, as Dr. Sharma said, that we should work on bagasse. So like my suggestion is in biorefinery, French people are doing really wonderful job. For example, our friend Frank Dumenil and his group and other groups which were there in that big Vision 2020 project. So there are a lot of things which they have proved up to a certain extent and they need to be taken further. For example, she talked about ethanol to hydrogen using nickel Syria catalyst, which has been developed by Lewis. They published that paper and then I wanted to push it in India, that project, because we have very good ethanol facilities compared to France. But somehow, again, it has to go through CEPIPRA. So my request to Dr. Shubhangi that, and Dr. Christoph and Dr. Kodako, that now you need to change the approach of CEPIPRA also. Isn't CEPIPRA for last so many years, what projects we have seen, these are all, definitely important projects as far as the fundamental understanding is concerned, but how long we want to understand? There should be industry which is interested in some of the projects which we have carried out. So my suggestion is that like the today meeting we have organized, how many industry people are here in this meeting? Have they said something of their problems? And Christoph, as you said, they want immediate solution. But you see nothing wrong in that because it's a business. So in that case, you have to give something as immediate relief medicine and long-term medicine, preventive medicines. But if you say that I will give preventive medicine and not immediate relief, then you will go to another doctor. So my suggestion, that's what I always interact with Dr. Swami, saying that we should have 2 projects with us as a scientist. One project, long-term project after 20 years, which is funded by CEPIPRA, DST, or government organization. But you should find out what is the immediate problem with industry, which I can support them through my experience and my facilities. For example, Kodako works so much on petroleum products. So those petroleum products, whether they are different in France and they are different in India. You have very good laboratory of this Total and other people. We don't have that knowledge in India. We just, I mean, till date, we just import technologies in refinery at least. So my suggestion is that, you see, India is something like an opportunity for trying your concepts which you have proved. So Dr. Subhagi, best way my suggestion is to talk to some people who are responsible for Indo-French collaborations. Maybe I think we have this. We met him. No, what's his name? Scientific Attaché in Mumbai. Then people.
Olivier. Yeah, Olivier.
They should identify at least 10 French industries, 10 French scientists who are doing 10. I mean, at least industry from India, 10 scientists. So at least 40 people can sit together and see what best we can do as far as the scaling up is concerned. They do not know what we have done and what is available with us. We publish, and that publication they don't read. No?
Yeah.
So it is better always to have one-to-one discussion with industry people. And I'm sure, for example, now we are starting to get either complete fructose from sucrose, and you have a process somewhere. But then we just keep on saying that we have a process, but that needs to be practiced somewhere and shown to the industry so that they will come up. You see, industry wants a foolproof solution. They don't want to do R&D because their money is hard-earned money. So basically now we have a very good platform of Indo-French relations. People are knowing each other for last 20-25 years under CEPIPRA. We have got a very good understanding. Like that's what we could see last we met in Strasbourg. Our frequency was matching so nicely, and our nature of work also overlaps each other. But then now we have to find out which work we can take up further per scale up together. Then only it is possible. Otherwise, we are in isolation, industry is in isolation, and we are happy. So best way is to talk to the decision makers who are supporting Indo-French relations in science. Sit with them, plan nicely, and they will be able to convince their government. For example, now that the patented process of ethanol to hydrogen, if you want to scale up and if you want to take it further, India is the best country. And there are people who are looking after, and now you see this green hydrogen and blue hydrogen is a big thing going on. So we can contribute in that. So that's what I was feeling. Even I heard her name, Lata, Suman Lata. She is from CSIR. She was telling that she has got so many new processes which she has developed. But then people should know what are those processes. People will tell you. Industry people tell you, okay, this is the best process. You please work on that. So that kind of assessment has to be done by industry people, not by ourselves. So there should be a very good communication between industry and scientific. Then only something will come out. If we are busy in our lab working ourselves, if they are doing their production, then we don't know each other. I have seen, industry people, they want a solution for certain things, or they want some new processes, new products. So thanks a lot. This is what I wanted to just share with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Dongre. I think that gap between lab to industry needs to be supported by some of the agencies. And as you said, in India, actually, there are almost 300 French industries, and they have a club of industry, which is they organize some meetings and which is coordinated by French embassy.
Yeah,
I think some of the like small groups related to chemicals.
French embassy and DST, SERB or something, they should say that this is a project which will support fully. But industry should suggest that this is the project we should work on. Then let government support it.
First, the industry should come forward to at least listen to
industry
what is available.
Come forward. They should be called. They should be approached.
Yeah.
They
So
will
that's
come
why
on
I
their
think
own.
that this French embassy people can really play a role, the scientific attaché and scientific coordinators, where
You see,
they are
the way
meeting
today you
industry
have
people.
organized a meeting with academics, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you have to take efforts to, organize a meeting with industry people.
Yeah. Yes. So that is what is needed, and I think that needs to be communicated to now French embassy.
It needs a very thorough, throughout survey of what is happening in the academia and what is required in industry by scientific attaché people, either in DST, in Government of India or Government of France. Those are the people who should work on this more. Otherwise, it becomes a ceremony.
Yes.
Just a small comment, question maybe. Should we write some documents, some statements, some say communique after our workshop and forward it to the French embassy in India,
Yes.
or maybe to?
Yes.
This is the goal.
Yeah. I will be doing that. Maybe I will forward it to you people once I make the minutes of the meeting, or make the some what do you call, like forwarding or message or whatever is needed at the end of the
for example, I am interacting with French embassy people for the last 20 years. You see, somehow they work something like informative kind of thing, propagating where government is interested, those kind of, but nothing concrete where this is the project in France which will have potential in India. If they suggest that way, then people, even scientists also will be interested, and industry also will be interested. The other day, I was talking to French scientific attaché that we don't have very good wine in India. You have the knowledge, give it to us.
I think that connect needs to be there.
Connect. You see, what is wrong in that?
Even CNRS office in Delhi, where we have this.
You see, we have all kinds of grapes. They are getting decayed. Our farmers are not getting good money out of it. There are so many, pomegranates are there. So many things are there which are biorefineries, which can be converted into some value-added product.
Wine is the best option right now when you don't have any other economic possibility for or technology for converting it to chemicals or fuels.
They have an institute. They have a wine institute in Bordeaux. Am I right? There is Scientific Institute of Wine Manufacturing and other things in Bordeaux. I was there with Professor Hagen-Muller, Chimney the Solid. So France is very much ahead of us as far as the knowledge is concerned, technology is concerned. So even a person like Christopher Kodako should spend 1 month in India. I will take them around. They will realize what best can be done for India.
Yeah, sure. That is an open invitation.
Because unless until they see it, it will be an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, at least for like biomass related, we have a lot of resources.
No, biomass is, I was in Goa, the whole area is full of biomass. They don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. So if something can be thought about.
I think also we can address waste utilization, not only biomass, but some organic waste.
That's what. Yeah. You see, Kodako, I was in Goa yesterday, and biomass is so much, but it is not pre-planned biomass. They just goes wild trees, wild things. It decays and remains there. So that area also is of no use for the people, and we don't get any concrete output from that. So that needs a proper planned forest. For example, in France, if you know, forests are not left like that on the nature. You plan nicely which tree has to be grown there. Am I right?
Yes.
Otherwise, what happens? So everywhere it is raining, the wild trees are going, it's going down, nobody can enter in. So that land is wasteland for some time. So a lot of problems are there where we can identify some things, and not necessarily only catalysis, a lot of other disciplines also can participate.
Yeah, and today there are like 7 parallel sessions going on. So I'm sure they will also think about how to take this further?
No, whoever are responsible for this, I mean, seminar, other things, you tell them that now you have to find out something, what next.
Yeah. No, that is what is a purpose of this knowledge summit. Like
Yeah,
you
so
cannot
you
leave
can-
it like a conference or something like that, just talk and leave it. I mean, you know,
So, no, French technologies which are not viable in France, if they find that they are viable in India, take it.
Sure.
Because there, you see, for success of technology, so many factors are there. Knowledge is one part, but availability of raw material, availability of cheap labor, availability of land, pollution control rules. You see, in France, if you want to do something, your pollution control rules are so tight that you cannot work on. Whereas in India, we have some relaxation.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yes, thanks. So anything further, Andrea, Christoph? Anybody else? Yes, I think definitely I'm going to.
No, nothing to add. Thank you.
Yeah. So I will put forth all these discussions as a way forward, and what are the gaps to take something further. I mean, from basic research to not full-fledged technology, but at least something which we can take it further. So with this, I would like to thank all of you for participating in the session, and thanks a lot. So, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for nice.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 Bye,
Christoph.
Sharmaji.
Bye.
We can work on bagasse.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Bye, Andrea. Bye, Christoph.
Bye.
Yes.